to help us put together a letter that you have in your packet that I'm happy to read for the record. And this is what we can vote on, we can discuss and vote on. It says, "Dear Selectmen, the Maynard School Committee voted at their meeting on November 10th, 2016 to request an article be placed in the January 2017 special town meeting warrant in the amount of $250,000 to address the drainage and accessibility issues of the Green Meadow Playground as discussed at the Board of Selectmen meeting on November 1st, 2016. The school committee is planning to sponsor this warrant, that should say article, warrant article, sorry. You're seeing everything as we do it by, hot off the presses right up until deadlines. Unless the Board of Selectmen prefer to be the sponsor, we defer to their wishes on that. Also, the school committee suggests the funds be appropriated from free cash. Unless the Board of Selectmen would prefer another funding source of funding, we defer to their guidance. Sincerely, Maynard School Committee. So I think as part of the report, I need to ask the school committee to discuss that, just because we're under the time crunch. So basically, if we decide to move forward, we would sign it after the meeting tonight and then send it over to town hall in time for the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday. So they need to do everything by tonight due to the Veterans Day holiday. So I'll open this up for discussion, and then we can, if we need to tweak the letter, we can have the tweaks done and then print it up, and then we can sign it after the meeting. So we've talked about this issue for a long time, so a lot of this is really, I think on our end, just making sure we're feeling good about next steps, but we've been supportive and trying to help shepherd a project that's been a known long time problem at the Green Meadow Playground for anyone that's just getting up to speed.
Discussion?
I'm just curious with the wording for the warrant article.
Yeah.
Will the town be drafting the actual wording of the article, or will we have some say in that? And does that depend on how they answer those last two parts?
In general, Aaron is taking point on this. I don't feel personally that I'm going to be crafting a warrant article. That's not my specialty. And we're just up against the deadline, and Aaron offered to be point, and the town administrator agreed. I kind of felt that we would be okay with that. I mean, we've just really never been writing warrant articles as a school committee.
Yeah, I would add in the past that we delegated that or deferred it to the town administrator or one of his delegates. So I know the town administrator's done for us in the past.
I would
Is there
just.
a specific wording you want to think about?
Well, I just would love if at the meeting,
Yeah.
if it's not included in, and I doubt it will be, they're usually not, the warrant articles don't include all the explanation, but to just put it in the scope of the larger project, because I feel like sometimes at town meeting, you see something that comes up at different times, and you're like, didn't we just pay for this before? So, like the plans for the playground, I know people have seen before, but explain really where this falls in the grander scheme of things, so that if we do move forward with trying to buy some more equipment for the playground at certain points or replacing it, that people know that this is, that's what we're thinking of down the road.
Yeah, this is a
Yeah.
step.
Yeah.
Okay, I can relay
That's
that.
it.
So, but I think that may fall on us then to set the context, because typically at town meeting, there's a selectman that's designated to introduce the article before
Yeah.
the vote, and there's usually some accompanying explanation. So that might be more incumbent on us to
Yeah.
prep that said selectman with the information that they
Yeah.
might need to tell the full story.
And I think my guess is if they support putting it on the warrant, they're going to expect one of us to get up and answer the question, which I think is great, because we're tied closer into the project and sort of where we're at. So part of what you're saying will definitely be, whether it's a slide, shown to the audience, an explanation, and things like that. So I think that's a really good point, and I can relay that back to them, that we just want to make sure we have a way to let people know it's a phase of an overall project. Sure.
Great.
And Don, just for me to be clear, so we vote on this tonight, this is ready for the Tuesday meeting, and then they discuss the responses to this and vote and return to us with.
Yeah, so the selectmen specifically decide what articles go on the warrant. Unless it's a planning board article, unless it's a conservation article, but we don't necessarily, we can't just say, put this on.
Yeah, okay.
They certainly have that stop-go ability. So what we're doing is sort of continuing the conversation we started at that meeting, and this is the formal request. So I was given some guidance today that we should submit the formal request, and then one of us, or however many of us, should plan to be on hand on Tuesday to answer any last questions. And that was part of my update as well, so.
Okay.
So yeah, lots happening.
So I'll make a motion to approve the letter dated November 11th, 2016, as currently constituted, with the addition in the second paragraph of the word article following the word warrant.
May I add, I don't know if this has to be in here before we vote, but we're missing the commas in the last two paragraphs. The last comma should be
Let's mark it up and get-
semicolons, that's it. But I just want to make sure I'm not changing it
English
after.
teacher.
Sorry, sorry.
Last of the day. And did you have article as well? And you've got that.
Yeah.
so, okay. All right, so a motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
And further discussion? And all in favor? Great. Thank you, guys. So yeah, so the final piece is this, if there was a yes vote tonight, it's gonna end up on the Board of Selectmen's agenda for Tuesday. So when we send that over, that'll trigger that being on their agenda on Tuesday. So I think that's all I have for tonight. So thank you all for bearing with us. Busy time of year. So, I will turn it over to Superintendent Ferrari.
Okay, well, Dawn mentioned that she and I attended the Massachusetts Association of School Committees and Superintendents Conference, and was incredibly valuable. We learned lots. We brought back some pins, some mask pins for the rest of the team members. But we brought back a lot of information. And in addition, Dawn and I were able to present at the conference. And we have so much to be proud of in Maynard. The presentation that we did was on the Maynard Public School successes and challenges with our foreign exchange program. But the first two slides were really talking about how wonderful Maynard is. And so I think there might be some copies back there if anybody wants to look at the talking points about Maynard Public Schools. But we have so much to be proud of. Maynard Public Schools are amazing. And it's great that we actually have a state presence, and we actually, through the process, we realized we have an international presence through our exchange program. We're out there as Maynard Public Schools as a destination for all countries across the world. So it's pretty impressive. So if anybody gets a chance to look at those bullet points, it's just a lot to be proud of. Now, that focus on the great culture in Maynard leads me to a difficult topic. This week, we had a very difficult election, and I'd like to reread what I addressed in my blog today, just because I think it's important for the viewing audience to hear it as well, because sometimes people miss things on a blog. But this is what I wrote in my blog today. Like many of you, I spent yesterday processing the impact of Tuesday night's presidential election results for our students, families, and colleagues. With this election, we reached the end of what has been a divisive conversation about the direction of this country. The faculty and staff at Maynard Public Schools will help students to process challenging speech where they hear it, so that we can continue to grow and develop as a community. Several parents have shared articles coming from the Huffington Post with me that they thought would be helpful. And last year, we had an esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Fernando Reimers, come for one of our book talks on global learning. And so in my blog, I share an article that he actually wrote for the Huffington Post, which was, I thought really would be a good message to share with the community. Now, I just want to add that during my 6 years in Maynard, I've observed what a wonderful school and greater community that Maynard is. In Maynard, we teach global citizenship, we teach respect, we teach tolerance, we embrace all people regardless of their race, color, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, national origin, age, disability. Our core values reflect this. And I'm confident that we live in an enlightened town and state, and we should take solace in that. We will remain vigilant to protect the civil rights of everyone in Maynard. I echo the words spoken by President Obama, former Secretary Clinton, and President-elect Trump over the last 48 hours. We now move forward as one people, united by common goals and dreams. In our roles as educators and parents, we are united by the hopes and dreams that we help our children to reach every day. It's now our task to protect those hopes and dreams for everyone. So I just wanted to share that because I feel very strongly about that. Finally, I'd like to end my report by focusing on some of our outstanding staff and students. I think Janelle might be talking about it, but, and I'll let her talk more about it, but Janelle and I and Principal Karajanis were at the National Honor Society induction ceremony last night, and Janelle did a great job inducting more students into the National Honor Society. We have so many students to be proud of. And one of the other things that I wanted to share, I received some correspondence with a colleague of mine who mentioned that she was coordinating an event for the Domestic Violence Services Network here in Maynard. And she actually asked our music director and our students to perform. And so if you wouldn't mind, I'd just read those, because it really does talk about what a wonderful community we have.
Great.
So she wrote to our assistant superintendent and I, "Dear Bob and Jen, wanted to thank you for all your behind-the-scenes assistance supporting last week's Light in the Darkness Candlelight Vigil, commemorating victims of domestic violence. As I stated in my email to Cindy, the Maynard High School students were just terrific. I know that some juggling had to occur for a smooth use of the Maynard High School auditorium, and I appreciate anything you did to assist in this process. The attendees were quite impressed with Maynard High School, the auditorium, the cafeteria, and especially the students. I also want to comment on the help we received as we were setting up. Every one of the Maynard Public Schools employees were so accommodating. The entire experience reflected very positively on Maynard Public Schools. Thanks for all your help, and she said, I hope to see you at the next Global Studies meeting. She's a member of Global Studies. She also wrote directly to Cindy Blanchard, who's our music director. I want to thank you and your amazing vocalist for a tremendous performance at last week's DVSN Light in the Darkness Candlelight Vigil, commemorating victims of domestic violence. The choice of songs and the way the students performed them were moving and inspiring. You certainly showcased the strengths of Maynard Public Schools' music program, as well as your leadership and the talents of the students. Many attendees commented on how much they were moved by the musical elements of the evening. I know that you had to make adjustments to your schedule in order to make this event happen. As a former teacher, I understand how difficult such adjustments can be at times. However, I hope you know how much it meant to the attendees to hear the voices of students and how much DVSN appreciates all you did to contribute to the event. I wish you much success with your upcoming musical program. Sincerely, Christine. So I just wanted to share those correspondences.
Great.
It's amazing. We have amazing students and amazing staff. And that's my report for today.
That's a fun way to do it. Thank you. Questions for Bob? I'd like to welcome Janelle.
Hi.
Hello?
So as Dr. Girardi talked about, we had NHS inductions last night, which went very smoothly. I was actually really surprised at the number of people that were getting inducted into NHS this year. So I think the number was like 23 or 24, which is amazing. And then moving on from that, my class, the senior class, is putting on Powder Puff next week, or no, not next week, the 21st of November. So I know we've been working on that. We've been trying to get the whole school involved. It's always a fun thing to do right before Thanksgiving break. And then Spirit Week is starting next Wednesday. That's something that everyone gets involved in. It's super fun. It's one of my favorite events, and I can't believe it's my last one. But yeah, so we have that coming up, and that ends the Tuesday right before Thanksgiving break. So, and then unfortunately, the boys soccer team lost their Central Mass semifinal last night, so they will not be continuing on, but they did make it very far. I know the girls are playing theirs tonight, so I don't really know how that turned out. But well, our football team is going to the district finals on Saturday, so that's something to look forward to. But that's all I have.
Where's the football game going to be?
I forget. It's at Doyle Field.
Saturday, 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock?
Any other questions?
Questions for Janelle?
Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle.
So the next thing on the list is citizens' comments, and this is designed for anything that's not going to be addressed later in the meeting. So if you've got something that's not listed, please join us. We just need your name and your comment.
Hi, my name is Ken Estabrook. So I'm coming here as a father of an 8th grader at the high school. So she's on the cross-country team.
Yep.
And I just wanted to note, as you guys are thinking about the budget, that the school now has a cross-country team, and they're pretty successful too. On the 29th, they went to the league championship, 8 schools. The girls varsity team, there were 55 runners, and 4 of our girls were in the top 20. And the team was, the Maynard team was in 2nd place out of those 8 schools. So obviously very successful. The boys team, not quite as successful, but one of the boys broke into the top 3rd in a field of 63, I think it was. So the reason why I was bringing it up is cross country is a pretty inexpensive sport for the school. It's a good sport also for the kids because it teaches certainly a lifelong sport that they can continue to participate in. One challenge though for the team this year has been around bus transportation. So I think the kids and the parents appreciate very much the work of the district, and the athletic director, the high school, to get a team fielded this year, almost at the last minute, and get a schedule out. So certainly I think the parents and students, the runners, all recognize that effort. One of the things that wasn't able to be done was getting bus transportation in the budget. The kids, I know, the parents have been driving, and I think many of the parents are going anyway, so that's not much of a big deal, but the kids have remarked that the other teams show up in buses, and they show up in cars, and it makes a difference, and they're noticing that. Certainly the bus gives them an opportunity to build team spirit, both driving there and driving back and so forth. And so, I know you have a lot of priorities, no doubt about it. And I realize also the school, as it takes a look at bus transportation to athletic events. This is a growing team, probably going to have more participants next year as the success of this year's team becomes more well known. And so that's just something I think that you all might want to think about as you're putting your budget priorities together. Thanks.
Thank you.
The cross-country team is such a great example of a Maynard success story. This was put together at the very last minute, started by one and then a group of parents really pushing. Since we didn't plan to put in the budget, there was a startup cost, and everyone was behind it if we could pull it off. And I say we, they did all the work. And then we had a tremendous number of kids sign up last minute, so I'm just so proud of all the work that was done. So I appreciate your comments, Ken, and it's definitely something that we will keep in mind moving forward.
Thanks.
I also know, I'm pretty sure we've talked about, even though the parents came up with the starting cost, it's something obviously that we want budgeted in the future.
The good news is across the board, participation is up and fees were up, and as we know, the fees, Ken, you remember, balancing the budget, the fees pay for about 28 or 30% of it, but it looks like the fees are up enough that we shouldn't have to even debate this with cross-country. So I think cross-country is already, we have, based on what we're looking at, Michelle and I, the budget to take care of it. Within the budget that we use, the reoccurring fees. So I think we're in good shape for it. So I wanted to give you some optimism to share with all the parents that it looks very good for being included in the budget.
Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments? If not, we will take next item up, Technology Committee update. Welcome.
Thank you very much. We're going to be brief. We'd like to give you an update of recommendations that were adopted by the school committee just a year ago, and we'll tell you about our progresses and what we're hoping for the future. In October 2015, the school committee very graciously adopted our technology plan. It was a plan that we spent about 18 months attempting to write. We used as our standards the guidelines the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education had given. We also used as standards what we know from the professional literature and research that's happening. And we also looked at neighboring districts, especially those who had been very successful in technology, to see what was going on. Every recommendation we made has a basis for improving student learning, student growth. So it's very, very important we come back to the fact of using technology is helping students grow. We're very, very happy that the first recommendation on an infrastructure update has been accomplished. We have an incredible debt to the town of Maynard for helping us finance this, also the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the federal government for their help with the E-rate. And I'm going to have Peter just speak a minute about what was done.
Yeah, so thank you. I just wanted to give you an update of the actual work that was carried out. I'm not going to get into too much technical detail unless you need it. But we were able to accomplish all of the work over the summer. The vendor we worked with, which was Wally Computers, were really fantastic. They did a brilliant job. We did a lot of planning beforehand, and it went extremely smoothly. Happened much quicker than I had anticipated. The Verizon internet connection, we were able to increase the speed of that. We've gone from a 50 megabit connection to 150 megabit, and we're sharing that connection between the 3 schools. The fibre between the schools that connects all the schools together, we were able to upgrade that. We've gone to single mode fibre from multi-mode, so we've gone from a 1 gigabit connection to a 10 gig between the schools. And all of the network switches were replaced, and we're running 1 gigabit across from them around the backbone. We have now an access point in every single classroom in the district, which is just, I've been here 6 years and we've struggled so much with wireless. I think I mentioned at the last meeting, our access points were donated and they were end of life. They were a pain to manage and they just weren't cutting it at all. So we're thrilled with that. We have not had a single issue. We have had no complaints about wireless access since school started. So it's just fantastic. We also had enough money left over to upgrade our firewall. We had a software, Sophos firewall, which again all of the schools come into. It was a big bottleneck. And we were able to upgrade that. We went for a Sonic Wall appliance. We had enough money to actually make it redundant, so we have 2 of them. And the throughput is just phenomenal compared to what we saw before. So we're very pleased about that. The College Academy and the College Gate programs that we run in the summer, there was a big concern obviously about those. What we're able to do is keep some of the old infrastructure in place, literally just cobble it together as best we could and kept those programs running while the rest of this work was going on. So there was no interruption at all. Really the only interruption in the whole of the summer was an outage of 1 day, which actually turned out to be half a day. So we were able to accomplish it really without too much disruption.
That only disrupted the central office. Because we're still here this summer.
We were able to patch in the people that we knew were going to be here during the summer. We were able to patch them in kind of across the old infrastructure and keep everyone running across the internet connection. So it was a very successful summer. Really, it's just been flawless. I mean, the speed of the network now is just phenomenal, really. And we've had absolutely no complaints, no tickets regarding any wireless access or slow internet speeds. It's just very good. So the money was well spent, as we said at the time. It's not really the sexy stuff, but it's made a huge difference. The problem we have now, of course, is we've got this infrastructure in place. We're ready to add all of these new devices, and that's that's gonna be a lot of work in itself.
So it brings us right into our second.
Excellent
Brings us right
segue.
into our second.
It's almost like you
Also
reversed
break the
that.
bad news.
Yeah.
We've done this a few times now.
Well, because of budget constraints, we have not been able to add the additional technology support person. We desperately need this person. Again, I would like to cite DESC guidelines, also examining what's done in other districts. And I think the third thing that Peter might say is our director of technology is very, very busy at times, doing some very valuable work, but we also would like him to have some more time to be visionary and talk about the future, and have a technology person do some of the everyday work. Peter,
Yeah, I think,
join in.
the recent background where I spent my life in the financial world, I was a director of a big technology group, and I looked at things in a much bigger, had to look at things in a big picture way. And I've been able to do some of that here, but I think I've spent a lot of time running around just fixing things, It's really taken, I've been here just about the same time as Dr. Girardi, and it's taken 6 years to really get it to this stage where it's state of the art in all of the schools. The rest of the time we've been living on donated equipment, and it's been a lot of hard work, and I've worn a lot of hats. But now I really feel I should be focusing, now I can sleep at night and the technology is working in the morning. I really should be focusing much more on the big picture things and moving the district forward with, how we can help students in the classroom in the future. I think I really want to look at our printing costs. We're doing a lot of printing here, and I'd like to cut those costs, take a look at that, and bring some vendors in and take a look at that holistically and see what we can do. You don't want to be paying your tech directors to do help desk tickets, you really don't.
You want to find efficiencies, which is what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Look at the big picture of the system, to figure
Yes.
out what's the most efficient and
Yes.
effective way for kids and also use technology.
Exactly.
Great. Our next recommendation, again, has not been implemented, again, because of budgetary constraints. What we wanted to do is to add one instructional technology position each year. The first year, FY17, we weren't able to do at 18 and 19, so that each school would have a curriculum-based instructional technology specialist who would help with the integration of technology, again, having its focus on better student engagement, student achievement, and lifelong learning. We base this, once again, on Department of Elementary, Secondary Education guidelines, and also what we've seen through the research and what we've seen in districts. I came from the district that's very, very high achieving, but in each building, we have had that kind, we had technological support, so teachers had everyday job embedded professional development to show how we can connect, how we can improve student learning through student engagement through the use of technology. So we are again submitting the budget. The first year recommendation is that we add one instructional technology person. Going on to the next recommendation, number 4, the school committee was so gracious in adopting what was an industry standard of a 5-year replacement cycle. This has been partially implemented. We have our 10-year technology plan was presented and approved. We have been able to fund much of this. We were not able to fund all of it. We were not able to do all of it because of the limitations, again, in our need for more technology support. And I wonder if Jennifer would just speak to that for a second.
Sure. When we presented the technology plan last year, one of the things that we talked with the technology office, with Peter and Jack in particular, is that if we want to add to the inventory in a way of creating a truly 21st century learning environment to improve student achievement and growth, if we needed to add to the inventory and become somewhere close to the recommended number of devices per technician, we really needed that 1.0 person, technician to be able to do that. Because we were not able to fund that position, we did not purchase the additional inventory in the same way. Because we do have an increased infrastructure, and because some of our devices were so old and required so much support, we have been able to add to the inventory somewhat. So we've had a desktop, and we've been able to replace that with 2 or 3 Chromebooks as an example, simply because the amount of time that Peter and Jack will need to spend on those devices is much less. And again, with the replacement to the the infrastructure. But if we do want to increase the number of devices, and our goal by 2019 or 2020 was to get to 1 cart of devices for every 2 classrooms K through 8, or K through 7, excuse me, that is something that we need to look at in terms of funding that position.
Thank you. Moving along, our 5th recommendation was sustained professional development. This, again, has been partially implemented. We've worked very closely with the national group called Bright Lights, who've given us a great deal of data on areas which we're doing well. We're doing extremely well with access. We have many areas that we're doing well. What we could use some improvement in is the actual, again, the delivery of helping students with 21st century skills through the use of computers. And again, we're planning professional development options for teachers. Much of our planning really is centered on what will happen in the 2017-18 school year, but it's an ongoing effort with this. Going on to number 6, the website as a rich resource for learning. We were talking about this just earlier this evening. We have been able to change our update our website. We've given a lot of help with this, and Jack Colombo particularly did a great job, so that it is accessible in every language, any language that the Maynard family speak. We immediately can get all our documents translated efficiently, and that has really helped us. In addition, we're urging educators to maintain a digital presence to improve communication and, of course, again, increase student learning. So that's, again, and a constant effort which will help with a little more personnel in that area will help us also. Number 7, the personal learning through digital tools. As a result of data that we had obtained from Bright Lights, the fact that more that can be done with people having, for instance, I'll give you an example, individual Twitter accounts. We now have a Twitter account for the district. Dr. Bob is opening his own Twitter account shortly. We also have a Facebook presence. Yeah, if I could just mention Twitter for a second. Twitter is an incredible resource for technological professional development. I use it quite a bit. There's all sorts of chats you get into interesting things. And what I like so much is you can find promising practices that have been successful in other districts. In many ways it can be duplicated, and opens our thinking to other ways of doing things. It's just not one set solution, so it's really great. And we have a number of teachers that are involved, a number of administrators that are involved. It's an ongoing process. We're getting there. Number 8, teaching of digital citizenship. We have a subcommittee that's worked on that. That's been partially implemented. We're in the process right now working with the district attorney's office. They have been absolutely incredible with us, and we're planning a presentation for students as well as parents in the evening on internet safety, cyberbullying, things that people may have heard before, but there's so much more information, so much that's happening. It's almost as if we have to keep up with all that's happening in the world of the digital world and safety. We've adopted for the year the safety and security standards in the computing and society section of the new Massachusetts Digital Literacy and Computer Science Standards. Our last recommendation has been fully implemented. We have a standing district technology committee. We call it our digital learning committee. We have a number of very wonderful, dedicated volunteers, and we're moving along. So, Jennifer, do you want to add anything to that?
I'd just like to thank Peter and Jack Colombo for all of their work over the summer. You know, it was an incredible undertaking for them to run 2 programs, to keep the central office and all of the building offices up and running as we need to be over the summer, and do all of the work that they did. I know they helped out a lot of the professional development opportunities when I would go to Peter and say, but I need internet access because we're running a Google Classroom training. And he was so gracious to make sure we had what we needed in addition to doing the work. So I think their efforts cannot be applauded enough. And they've put us in a great stand to be able to do some of the work that we want to do in bringing access to our kids.
They're real gems, absolutely.
And I'd just like to thank Charles for being a digital
Yeah.
encouraging me to be more digital, and even when we go on classroom visits together, he's constantly looking at you know, what is on the inventory, where can I find a resource for teachers, how can I help teachers, how can we be more quickly to help teachers, because we ask them to use technology, and then if something breaks down, in the past, it might take 3 months to fix it, and recently he helped solve the problem so that it only took 3 days to fix that. So I want to thank, you know, all of them, but also Charles, because it's always on his mind, as you can tell, he's passionate about it.
May I just ask one quick question? With the technology specialist that we obviously didn't fund for this fiscal year, with regards to the plan to add one for 17, 18, 19, is it the sort of thing where we still want to phase in one each year? Or would you guys ask for two?
We're very happy with the first year.
Okay,
implementation,
okay.
Even though it's the second year, we're very good.
Okay, thanks.
I think also I want to add that the technology person we're looking for is a much lower level person than Jack.
Oh, the technology.
The technology person, yeah, separately. So, you know, not that we're paying Jack a great deal of money, but it's a much more low level.
Entry level.
The support
position.
person, yeah.
Do you mind just clarifying the instructional tech specialist? Is that someone that works more with kids or more with teachers?
Works with
Yeah.
teachers,
Works with-
absolutely
that's what I
with
thought. I
teachers.
just
The person would be working with kids along with the teacher. It isn't an idea to have a special class, it's an idea of helping teachers with lessons to implement technology and find out what have been some very successful practices. And again, there's a whole, so many resources available to us.
The other thing I think in terms of that piece, Charles and I were able to attend at MassQ, which is a conference put on by MassQ, which I could figure out the name of,
That's
but
Computer
Computer
User
Educators,
Educators.
Computer User Educators. It's a very old name, apparently, because we all use more things than computers. And the Massachusetts Association of the School Superintendents, they put on an annual conference every year, and one of the things that they've done recently is really highlight the work that districts are doing. And so we were able to attend a talk by Algonquin High School students, you know, Charles, obviously being from that district, was able to sort of ask some questions. But the instructional technology specialist that was working there, or that was leading the students in the presentation, essentially was able to allow these students to gain some real life experience, some real work experience, where they hosted, for example, a technology night at the libraries in Northborough and Southborough, where community members could come in and get help with various aspects of technology that they had there. They did a few community presentations and things that needed to be done, and that was all led through the work of the instructional technology specialists through some of the clubs. We also attended a presentation from I should have written this down, from another school district where they have their instructional technology specialist, or one of their instructional technology specialists, essentially is able to help students run like they call it the iDesk or something, where they have like a genius bar, if you will, within their school, and that the students are able to help other students, getting some certifications, doing some things with some break-fix components, but then also designing trainings, designing implementations, and actually giving those. So giving some real-world practical experience for students, as well as working with the teacher. So there's a wide variety of options, and this position really frees up a lot of opportunity for really being innovative in what we do with students and with teachers.
Could I just ask one question? No, you go ahead.
You first.
Just thinking ahead to budget season and looking at the requests that you have, if you had to say what your priority is of the positions, is there one that you could say would be the priority? Do you not want to go on record giving a priority? Just
I think Charles and I would duke it out.
We probably differ on that.
Okay, that's fair.
Obviously, the technology support person is not going to be nearly as expensive as instructional technology specialist. But it almost, it's so hard to say.
Yeah, okay.
We really would like.
That's fair. I don't want to.
It's like having two children.
I mean, of course, my take would be different. It would be a no-brainer for the technology person, because we really, if you discount me, we have one technology person for 3 schools, and we have a one-to-one program in the high school, and we have the potential of 2 brand new networks that we're going to be able to add many devices to. So to have one technician working in 3 schools, that's not going to work.
I mean, I get the other side of it too, in the sense that if you have all that technology and the devices, but you don't have the support to be able to really guide learning.
Yes.
And get the
they go
teachers to,
hand in hand.
yeah,
They
yeah.
really do.
So I can see
Yeah.
both sides of it.
I'd like to make a plea to continue to focus as much as possible on number 6, our district website. Obviously, in my 4 years on the school committee, it has gone from, the Flintstones level to something more approximating like, the 1970s. But I think we, as a community, could do a much better job of pushing information
You're absolutely correct.
to our families.
You're absolutely correct, and one of the nice things is it's nice to have something to work on. That is one of the things.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate that.
And to see the progress too. I mean, that's a good thing, yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Thank you.
7. We could do better.
Yeah.
Because 70s was a good decade,
It's all
though.
about continuous
Just
learning.
saying.
I barely made it in there, so I can
Thank you guys.
You had to slip that in there.
Yeah, no, little dick.
Power Fields.
So I know Steve Jones originally asked to be on the agenda, but he had a big meeting tonight, so I'm assuming somebody else came on his behalf? Yeah, so thank you.
Welcome. If you could just say your name, if it doesn't happen in
Yep, so my name is Brent, and on behalf of Steve Jones, who's the varsity soccer coach and is coming back from Lunenburg, so wasn't able to make the meeting. So we were here back in the spring, and our focus is trying to improve the Fowler Field. I think anybody who has been out there in the last 5, 6, 7 years has seen the deteriorating condition of Fowler. And it is the main facility for the Maynard School soccer program, as well as being used by the youth soccer program, but primarily the varsity teams practice there, the JV teams practice and play there, and the middle school teams also practice and play there. And so we came, our goal was to try to get funds to improve that field. The CPC came back and said, please do a study to look into that, and with the concurrence of the school committee, and gave us your support and your blessing, and asked Kevin Caruso and Aaron McCloskey to helm that effort. So that was last spring. This past summer, we talked with Kevin and Aaron, and I believe Aaron has, unfortunately, they're not here to speak to this, but Aaron has engaged somebody to do this study, but the study's not complete yet. So Steve went back to CPC because our concern is that, especially after going through a season, which we did, and it really was bad this past season. I'm fortunate enough to have 3 children who play on JV and middle school teams, and it's tough down there. And so the concern we have is that by the time that the study comes back, that if we go back, we're not going to have, essentially we're going to lose a year, because then we have to wait a year to go back to CPC. So our goal was to put in money, or request for funds for CPC. I believe Steve got an extension. There's a meeting next week. So we need the school committee's blessing, essentially, because it's the school's field. And so that's what we want to do, is we want to be able to earmark funds so that when the study comes back, we can actually act on it, and so that the hope is that really by next season, we'll have improvement. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be 100 times at that, whatever times better than it would be this season. So that's kind of, I think, the nutshell. I don't know if there's any questions or.
Sure, the drought didn't help.
The drought really didn't help, yeah. And Aaron really worked hard, really made an effort to get water down, because there was not even water down in Fowler. I mean, it's really, it's a tough facility, and it's got a lot of potential, but it's kind of been, whatever. But so we got it, and I believe right as we got the hookup, they implemented the drought status of, no water. So, yeah, it didn't help, and it was a dust bowl down there as well. So, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I should hold speech with that.
Excellent.
Jim's also someone with an accent. So.
All right, I'll put my best. So, first of all,
thanks, because I know that you're volunteers, and we're volunteers ourselves, so thank you for volunteering. And I know probably when you hear from people, they're just asking you for things all the time and not thanking you, so. You can't say it's thankless, because you got this thanks. So
We can never use that again now.
My name is Barry Roach. I'm the president of Maynard Soccer, and, you know, I'm representing kids from Green Meadow, such as Lucas, Drew, Sebastian, and Calvin.
Well
played. I also represent kids from Fowler Schools. Daniel Friedman, are you still in Fowler? Yes. So I'm representing Daniel Friedman, Patrick Briggs, Molly Hines. I represent Will Stakovitz. I think his mom's here. And Katie, and see, I don't have all. I also represent high school kids, Justin Hines and Riley Hines. It's a lot of Hines. So one of the things I did as president of Maynard Soccer this year was, including my own children, was a field coordinator. And you know, it's actually quite difficult finding fields in Maynard. And we really do our best, especially for practices. The high school team moved aside to let U10 kids practice at one point this year, which is amazing. But we really rely on Fowler Field a lot. And what I think is, you know, part of what I represent is I have a duty to, you know, like I came and helped with Tiger Cubs, to the children, to make sure that we give them what they need, right? The facilities that they need, and facilities that are fit for use. And I'm not sure that Fowler Field represents a facility that's fit for use. So, good news is, I'm not asking you for any money, right? So we're not asking for money, we're just asking for you. Sorry.
We want to give you more than for free to pass the hat.
Yeah, I can ask you for money later. But we're just asking you to continue the support that you already gave us. So we're really thankful for the support that you gave us for the study. And now that the study's going to be ready soon, we want to act as soon as possible. The sooner we act, the better, just because we want to make sure that nothing happens to any kids playing on that field and that it's ready for use. So that's it. Awesome.
Hi, Peter Delzon, I'm the Commissioner of the Recreation Commission. I just want to let you know that we're behind the study 100%.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And let's welcome Steve Jones.
Steve Jones.
Just in time.
No, you don't have to.
They did very.
They represented,
Great
yeah.
job on your behalf, so we'll take a break, yeah. So I'll open it up for school committee questions.
I think there's no doubt in anybody's mind that we need to do something.
Oh, sure.
And I'm glad that you guys are really driving this, so thank you. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Like I said,
Yeah.
Claire said, thank you. So.
I've been touching base with some folks at town hall, Aaron, everybody, and I know that so putting Aaron aside for a minute, because I don't want to make it sound like he said it, but some other people have been worried about when we implement all of this. So that's why I always just throw that out there, like, we've got to work together, but I say it like from a good place, like, I think we all want this to happen, why wouldn't we? I've heard about the Fowler Field since before I even had a kid. So yeah, so I think it's a worthwhile project, just make sure we all keep in touch, because there's always this, okay, so now we've put the funds aside, how do we do it?
Right.
So just make sure we keep in touch, and, you know, I'm sure it'll be successful, and I'm glad that this qualifies for CPC money, because not everything does. So.
That's true.
So yeah, thank you guys.
I'm just curious, just because I know about the CPC. So how much, what are you guys thinking for your strategy as far as how much you're going to set aside? Have you kind of gotten like a...
We're asking CPC for 50.
You are, yeah, for implementation. So you're going to potentially phase it? Because I imagine it's going to be... Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we expect that it'll take us 2 or 3 cycles to go through.
Yeah. What do you think that 50, just, I'd love to know what you think you'll be able to get for that, just to...
So we're hoping that with money that we could potentially raise and fundraise in with that 50, and maybe if the town could help us a little bit, that maybe we could get to the point where the design plan shows that we were going to keep the existing field the way it is, we would try to get a grade and some loom down there so then we can get seat and stuff. Aaron was nice enough to put $10,000 in from the town to put a spout out there that we could move a water cannon around the field. So maybe we don't have a full irrigation system that would make it easy, and we have volunteers that are up there at night moving the cannon around, keeping it wet, and growing the grass, and start from there until we have a full-fledged facility that the town could be proud of. That, you know, it's a good example of how the town is doing and how we think about our kids.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you all
Thank
for
you.
pushing us forward.
Thank you,
Really.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We don't need a motion.
Do we
No.
need a motion or anything?
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we're
Yeah.
basically just, it's, you
Yeah.
know, an update, we're still in support
Okay.
of the course. I think we're fine, unless you
Good.
guys think we need to do.
No, unless they told us they need a motion, I think they're
It's still early
okay.
in the CPC process, so they could come back towards the end, but I don't.
Yeah, I just
we'll
wouldn't
go
want
over
that
it.
to be hold them up if the
Yeah.
CPC's like,
Yeah.
but did you get a motion? I don't know.
So did I miss something there? Is it appropriate for us to get the motion and have your support vote?
We
Oh,
don't, we don't know what the CPC requires, you know, I mean, we're happy to vote,
But
but we're still in support.
You absolutely have our
Yeah.
support.
I would
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will make a motion then to give our support to the proposal to ask for CPC funding to move forward, earmark funds to move forward once the study is completed.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Also, I
Thanks, guys.
just wanted to say thank you to you all, because I know the budget has been tight and tough, and so the fact that you're looking for funds in this other location too is really, it's helping the schools, it's helping our kids, it's helping the whole town, so, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
School improvement plans.
Do we have anything? I don't think so, because I think they're doing it as PowerPoints for each bill.
So thank you all so much. Principal Kara Janus, Principal Seller, and Principal Nate Durr, and I, and the Director of Human Services, Carol Gahan, worked on this presentation to give you an update on our school improvement plans. We thought the first thing we would do is give you an update on what happened last year. So last year, we came forward with a series of goals. We wanted to give you an update on where we were with those. So one of our first goals was strengthening curriculum and instruction. We had significant work on the science curriculum revisions, both at all three levels, actually, with significant release time and professional development time that was available there. We worked extensively on our literacy and our math coaching and our wellness curriculum and our school safety. All of the schools work to really build a data culture where when our teacher teams and our service providers and administrators are getting together, we're using student work, student data, observational data to begin to look at problems and assess potential solutions and look at growth. So that was an incredible effort. The data analysis for some specific examples led to changes in the school scheduling structures and in the high school advisory model, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we move forward. We had significant amounts of cultural proficiency work where several administrators and myself and many teachers went to some trainings on cultural proficiency, really looking at how we make sure we see all of our students and providing them all opportunities to be highest achievers as possible. The high school advisory model, again, was revised last year and then revised again based on student data and feedback. We have the Bridges program that has continued and will continue here at Fowler, where we have our senior citizens coming in and working with our students here at Fowler. And at Green Meadow, there was a significant amount of work continuing on community meetings and responsive classrooms. So much of this has been covered in terms of communication. That was one of the issues that we heard a lot about and wanted to continue to work on. So we have revised the Facebook, we have created a Facebook page where we communicate with families in that way. We have created a Twitter account. We have updated the website. We will continue to work on doing so. And we had significant engagement with the community in regards to a visioning session, which has continued this year with some task force meetings and so on. And then the last goal we had was meeting the needs of all learners. We had a complete revision of the BBST process, which is our building-based support team. That's where we get get teachers and guidance counselors and administrators together to target and look at students who might be at risk for either academic failure or academic struggles, social emotional issues, school avoidance, all sorts of reasons why kids might struggle and need some assistance. To make sure that we identify them and we're using that data analysis model so that we're providing multiple interventions and multiple areas of support in that piece of it. The English Language Committee, or English Learners Committee, excuse me, has been a robust group of incredible volunteers from the teachers and some administrators to make sure our English learners are provided with the resources and supports they need. In addition, we have worked last year to create professional development opportunities that we are continuing to roll out for our teachers to make sure that all students are given that support in the classroom. And there was significant revisions to the Green Meadow and Fowler school schedules that would allow us to provide interventions and extensions for students so that they can all learn in the ways in which they need to. Coming into this year, we wanted to take a lot of the visioning work and conversations that was done with the community last year and really focus and target what we wanted to be working on. So we took the larger strategic plan, which is that building with the pillars, and sat down with the administrative team over the summer and said, okay, what is the work that we're going to be doing with our teachers this year when we have professional time, when we have time for our teacher teams to get together, how can we focus that time so we're working towards something at the end? And this was the mission, strategic mission that we did identify, and we used this mission for us to be able to say, okay, again, when we have that collaborative time, what are we asking teachers to do that moves us in this direction and works us towards that goal? This is the picture that you're familiar with, and what I did in this image is to show you for the different pillars which of the strategic initiatives we would be focusing on this year related to that strategic mission. So these are really the initiatives that we're kind of touching on in our work with students, or in our work with teachers this year. From that, our administrators led conversations with their school councils, and with their faculty, and there are several school-based goals, and I'd like to invite the principals and Carol to come on up so that we can talk about the school-based goals.
Welcome.
First, we want to start thinking about our academic goals. Part of what we think about our education is educating the whole child, but providing a child with a superior academic experience is really the heart of what we do. And thinking about how do we enhance their knowledge base and how do we help them learn and grow. And that's such a broad concept, so that what we did as a school is to kind of think about which areas do we want to pinpoint and focus on so that we continue to grow in those areas. Last year, we started a really fruitful collaboration with the Massachusetts Audubon Society as we began to enhance our science, not only the content of the science, but thinking about the way we construct, thinking about that inquiry-based learning and helping students to grow and to think and to kind of ponder and to learn how to problem solve. So we did a lot of work together in terms of the pedagogy and in terms of the way we teach and the way we instruct and how we use the environment that we have around us. But what we would like to do now is continue on that path, but now kind of hone in a little bit and really kind of outline what is our science program for each class, each grade level, each school year. So what is it that our first graders are going to learn, our second graders, our third graders? What are those critical concepts and those essential knowledge bases that form their scientific understanding? And from there, we can delve into how do we share that? What kind of experiences do we want them to have? What kind of activities will foster that growth? So one of our core focus this year is really fostering those commonalities, fostering the common expectations, and fostering the inquiry-based learning.
So Principal Seller from Fowler was unable to be here tonight. She was ill, so she expresses her regrets, but when she came in and saw Chairman Capello and I, and we told her to go home. But I do want to provide you with an update on their goal. One of the things that Sharon and her faculty have been working on and will work on this year is really establishing a common school-wide writing rubric. There's plenty of evidence that shows that focusing on writing across the curriculum is going to improve student growth and achievement throughout all content areas. It's a critical thinking process that students will go through. But in order to do that, what the Fowler staff really wants to make sure of is that there's a common language and there's common expectations. So the Fowler School is going to use the work that the high school has done and is continuing to work on this year about developing common writing rubrics. They will use that as a base, take that and transition it to an elementary and a middle school model for the grades that are appropriate, make sure that it's written in student-friendly language so that students will be able to access what the expectations are and be able to work towards meeting them. They hope to have a draft rubric finished through a collaborative process by February. And then in March, teachers will begin piloting elements of the rubric with their students so that they can use a norming process to make sure that, if I'm reading a paper and you're reading a paper, we both see the same things. So that is the work that they're going to be doing on writing.
The high school has also a school-wide writing goal for this year. About 6-7 years ago, we did a self-study to prepare for our NEASC report, and school-wide writing rubrics were developed that were pretty effective, as well as departmental rubrics. But they really haven't been revisited in about 5 or 6 years now, and we've come to realize they're not particularly in student-friendly language, so we want to do that. We're in the process of updating those. They should be ready by about March 1st. And some other things we've noticed are that student preparation and writing has been a little bit weaker over the last few years, and I don't say that to point to academic preparation at the Fowler or anywhere else. I think there are a number of reasons for that. One thing I notice in the high school or in society is, I think shortly after birth now, a child's issued a smartphone, and they get very used to texting.
140 characters or less, Chuck.
I was just going to say Twitter. You have to communicate in 140 characters or less, and you wind up with fragmentary speech, and it shakes out in grammar. And what we want to do is make sure that writing is across the curriculum in all departments, so all departments have a rubric. We've also had, if you think about a 5-year period of time, fairly significant staff turnover that just happens. So we really want to dedicate some retraining this year in our departments on a department-by-department basis. Our training to calibrate grading, so that norming grading, so that all teachers in the department are evaluating in the same way, and that's underway right now. We're even looking at some new technology tools that help with rubrics. Google Classroom has a new app called Gubrix, where you can put your rubric with a student's paper, and they have Doctopus, so you import their document, you attach the rubric, you then score the rubric with their paper, but you also create a database at the same time. So teachers can now easily analyze student work to say, what areas is the entire class having difficulty with? What area is this student having difficulty with over time? We're just scratching the surface of that right now.
That's cool.
This is our academic goal for the year, is to get our student writing enhanced and to do it across the entire school.
Was that Gubrick?
Gubrix.
Doctopus.
Cool.
Oh,
I
God.
teach
She's
high
supposed to
performance.
choose a Twitter name, so let's be careful.
No, Chuck, I mean, we're just in our infancy in my district, working with Google Classroom, and that's the first I've really heard about it. So. Oh my.
Maynard's where it's at.
We're really just introducing this, so right now people are even just wrapping their heads around what can it even do. We haven't done much formal training yet, but I think it starts with getting the idea out there and having a couple of early adopters and going from there.
Well, I love the use of technology to sort of crunch the data and do the analysis for you, because then that takes teacher time that they can then use to teach our children, rather than the late nights or the early mornings to analyze all of that stuff. If Google will do it for us, and I know it's listening to me right now. It's a wonderful tool. It's watching me too, as a matter of fact, probably through that camera.
Well, that's true about our kids' games, I mean, there's no privacy.
Just, when you speak of the Google, speak nicely.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chuck.
That's definitely very exciting to hear, as
very
being a newbie in the group, to hear that we have teachers and students that are so excited to try something new, to venture out there. In student services, the academic goals do range. Some are very student-specific, but we have some teachers looking at a different way of providing like our TIC therapy. Instead of it being 1 times 30. What happens if I do it in short bursts within the classroom? So we have a couple of SLPs doing that. I think that's very exciting. And I said to them, don't do it for all, 20 kids. Do it for 3 or 4. That way they have the time to really collect the data and find out how it works. Trying to keep the process not overwhelming. We have students or teachers looking at transition assessments. How can we improve that so that we have better IEPs for the students that are 14 years or older? Something that's very exciting for me is the continuing growth of an implementation of the social thinking curriculum, as well as we have a nice handful of teachers really looking at regulation. Self-regulation, and there's a number of programs out there. The zones of regulations comes from, is designed by an OT that works with Michelle Garcia Winner with the social thinking, and this is just so exciting to me. The idea is to get the students to sort of understand how they feel. The blue zone is where you're sort of really low. You're sad, you're depressed, you don't feel like moving. The green zone is where you're ready to learn, okay? You're ready to go. That's where we want everybody to be. The yellow zone, you're a little frustrated, you're excited, or you're just can't focus on the green. And then the red zone, well, you're really just a little out of control. But what the idea with this is to help the students understand how they feel in these different areas, and then try different activities that will bring them into the green zone, and have the students understand that. So as a lifelong goal for us is to be able to have students that struggle socially, struggle emotionally, struggle with their anger issues, have some strategies when they become adults of how to deal with that. So I'm very excited that I have a large group of staff that some have brought this into their student learning goal, and then are bringing it also into their professional development goal. I am so excited, and they're working as teams together. I was thrilled.
So that's a nice transition to the social emotional goals. Carol has been really integral in coming on board to make sure that when we're thinking about social emotional learning, we're thinking about our at-risk students, but we're certainly thinking about it from a broad-based perspective, and her wealth of knowledge with those different programs and the overlaps and intersections has really provided us a great deal of structure. So we're going to talk about the goals for the buildings, for the social emotional.
Just tying into all of that, we as a school are really focusing on our social emotional goal. We have a responsive classroom goal because we continually work on ourselves as a responsive classroom school and how we treat each other. Our core values are the cornerstone of who we are and what we do, and every Green Meadow student can tell you that they are kind, safe learners. And they can also, so today, for example, we had a wonderful assembly about how that looks. Kindness is cooler, Mrs. Ruler, that children were learning about being kind. But we're also learning the self-awareness of how to identify as in those zones how children can not only identify where they are, but how can I help myself move from zone to zone? What can I do so that I can be proactive and advocate for myself? But as a school, one of the things that we focus on is the fact that our children are in so many settings and work with so many different people throughout the day. that we want to kind of hone in again and really develop consistent vocabulary and consistent expectations so that when they go from one place to another, they know that the expectations are the same, they can expect the same from their peers, the peers can expect from them, what they are expected to follow, directions they're expected to follow, everything is consistent and it is natural and it is comfortable for them. So developing that consistent expectation that in the cafeteria, in their music class, in their classroom, on the playground, so that they know that vocabulary, that they know how to work collaboratively, that they know how to interact with each other and have positive interactions. And that'll help us reinforce and establish our core values.
So at the Fowler School, they've really taken hold of this idea and the concept of growth mindset, which was the book that we read over the summer and had our book discussion on as a community. But many of the Fowler staff had taken ownership over this idea last year, the fourth grade team in particular, and it seemed like a natural inroad for them in looking at the social emotional components that we wanted to be targeting this year. So what they're going to be doing is really using a lot of the work that's being done out of an organization called Transforming Education. If you remember Richard Fournier, who was here, was it just last year? Was it 2 years? I was only here last year, so it was last year. So he now is their director of district partnerships, and he's doing a lot of work with districts to try and expose us to what resources are available through this nonprofit organization who has worked with districts out in California and districts around the country, really. One of the things that they have done, which we shared with the staff at Fowler, is to work with a set of districts out in California to develop some rubrics around, self-assessment rubrics around some of these social emotional strategies, and one of them being growth mindset. And we were really taken by a study that Transform Ed had done with schools in Boston, where students' self-perception of their data was very related to their eventual graduation from high school, their graduation rates, their potential suspension rates. So just the students' self-perception of how much of a growth mindset they had really linked to their ability to perform in some really critical areas. So what the staff is going to be doing at Green Meadow, or excuse me, at Fowler School, is really going to be looking at developing a survey that we will be giving to students so that they can self-report and self-assess. And we'll be hoping to do that in December of 2016, and then doing some interventions and strategies, reevaluating in May of 2017, where we'll be able to hopefully see some growth in that area. And again, really not trying to reinvent the wheel, but working on some studies that have shown some great success in some other areas. So it's very exciting work at Fowler that is being echoed at the high school.
Cool again. At the high school, our social and emotional goals this year have been around growth mindset and our advisory model. In the area of growth mindset, last year during one of our student advisories, we actually worked with the students themselves on defining what a growth mindset is and how that can impact their own learning. And one of the things that we've done throughout our advisory model is we've surveyed our students regularly as we've worked on the advisory model over several years. And the student feedback was, it was a useful topic, but boy was it boring, and they really didn't like it. But more on that in just a little while. We also, as recently as this past Tuesday, when we had our professional development day, we worked with staff around growth mindset, because although there was a book reading and all that sort of thing, not every single staff member necessarily read that book or came to the workshops. And we've hired 7 new personnel at the high school to start this year for whom this concept is entirely new. So we really broke into working groups and looked at a variety of topics. And the group consensus was summarized by one teacher who said that, you know, growth mindset is about getting away from using the word is and labeling people and moving to using the word becomes in all situations. And there's a lot of nodding and thanking of Phil Grandin for, you know, sort of crystallizing it in such a neat way. Our advisory model, again, grew out of the NEAS report that was submitted to us about 5 years ago. the New England Association of Schools and Colleges requires that schools have advisory groups now, and it's based on some pretty good academic research, and I've actually read quite a bit of it. The notion is that if students create additional linkages with adults and peer groups in non-academic settings, it creates networks where when they're having difficulty, they can reach out to someone they're comfortable with. It builds their resiliency. It translates into things like reduced dropout rates, increased attendance rates, increased grade performance, and it's really coming out of a social structure where the student feels comfortable within the school. So we implemented an advisory model 3 years ago, we, on each early release day, last period, would have an advisory group. What we rapidly discovered, and to be full disclosure, is the students viewed this as an opportunity to head for the hills before the end of the day, and we were sort of chasing people around. So we thought, this isn't working, and we surveyed the students, and they agreed that it wasn't working. So in the second year, we kind of fooled them. No, we changed the structure. We moved off of early release days. We put the advisory periods in the middle of academic days, so there would now be sort of a natural consequence if they sort of decided to head out early. And what happened is the students in fact stayed, and we gave a advisory committee formed of staff members, created topics that were handed out and discussed in each advisory group. And the students in the surveying after year 2 and during year 2 really didn't like that. It wasn't a student-generated topic. It felt artificial. Frankly, the staff members, I don't think the buy-in was uniform because it's sort of an imposed topic. But we did something at the very end of the second year where we had our students break out and do community service projects at areas all around town and at the different schools. And for the first time, when students were surveyed, they said, this was tremendous. We saw the level of engagement was shifted. So over the summer, a volunteer group of staff members put together an advisory model for this year where staff members identified personal interests. Could be sewing, could be yoga, could be construction, could be self-defense, and our various faculty members have their own interests, and we allowed students to sign up for the topics they were interested in, and we began the advisories this year, and the results have been fantastic in terms of students wanting to do it. The social engagement has been excellent. The networks we were hoping to create appear to be starting to form. So after 3 years and much surveying, we seem to be reaching a point now where the effectiveness is really increasing. So,
Chuck, may I jump in for a second? Just for parents who might not have been here at a previous meeting, both Janelle, our student rep, and the other 2 students whose names I can't recall off the top of my head, but they were just saying how much they love the new advisory too. So just echoes what you're telling us. They said it was phenomenal.
So I'm with John Mollica, and we're working on reconstructing the ticket booth up at the field, and the students are having a great time as well. So that's what we've been up to.
That's great.
And so the last part is that each school council, as they meet and talk about sort of the district structures and our strategic plan, we wanted to make sure that there were opportunities if there were needs at each of the buildings. So each of the buildings has identified an area that the school council, which is made up of parents and teachers, have identified as an area of need. So we'll talk a little bit about this.
When we spoke as a school council, we had difficulty landing on one academic goal because there are so many areas for us to focus on. We were very thoughtful about the science and the importance of that science work that we're doing, but also really thinking about the mathematical thinking. How do we help our children become mathematical thinkers and not just learn how to just compute? How do we help them learn to problem solve? A few years ago, we implemented a new resource, GoMath, and we're using that to kind of standardize and give some consistency to the math instruction that we do as we teach the Common Core standards. but how do we bring them beyond that? And so we're looking to make sure that we have alignment and common assessments and common expectations, and really focusing on enhancing and developing those skills. So in addition to the science, math is a real focus for us, and then that brings us together. They really enhance the thinking skills of our students, the critical thinking skills and abilities.
So at Fowler School, one of the pieces their school council discussed is the family and community engagement and the need for increased communication sort of both ways. We've talked about that here. We've talked about that throughout the broader community as well. Really creating that homeschool partnership, but not wanting to sort of jump before, taking a survey of the ground ahead. What they're deciding to do, which I think is incredibly smart, is to collect some data and identify and do a needs assessment to see what are the kinds of communications that parents are looking for, what are the kinds of communications that teachers are looking for, so that we can help students grow. So they will be creating that survey, and then once they have the results of that survey, we'll be identifying sort of next steps to increase that partnership.
The school council at Maynard High School has been examining really the implications of the 8th grade moving back to the Fowler School. There are a number of impacts that we're identifying. One impact is right now at the high school, and we keep enrolling students. We enrolled like 2 more students this week. We're at about 520 and climbing. What we've found is we've reached periods of the day where every single teaching space in the building is in use. So that even if you wanted to add a class, it would be in the parking lot, essentially. So we've really reached that point. And with the 8th grade moving back to the Fowler, one of the implications is we're going to have more scheduling flexibility. And there are some curricular areas that the school site council would like to see either enhanced or brought in. Right now, we really don't have much in the way of computer classes at all. And, we're going to have the opportunity now, we're going to have the space to do that. But there are then staffing implications, like there needs to be somebody to teach computer classes or accounting and business classes. There's also a concern about our being able to maintain 2 world languages, French and Spanish, because with the 8th grade moving back, some FTEs will follow the foreign language back to the Fowler, but we'd like to keep those FTEs at the high school so that we could still offer a robust introductory through AP instruction in both French and Spanish. So these are the sorts of things that are being examined right now. And another scheduling item that is arising, or scheduling items that are arising, are things like the research that's out, and it's been out for quite a while now, about start times for high school. So should we examine a later start time at the high school? Should we even re-examine our basic scheduling structure if we're going to bring in something like a WAVM Chapter 74 type program in the next couple of years? So a lot of things kind of link to scheduling, but the conceptual basis behind those links is quite varied. So our school site council is really looking at those, and the high school itself is looking at those, and that's what we've been up to on Tuesday afternoons once a month.
And did I see in an email that you just recently got some positive news about the Chapter 74 program?
The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education just made available a large pool of grant money for Chapter 74 programs statewide. When I read the parameters surrounding the grant, it was pretty clear that it was really designed for technical vocational schools. I don't think they thought anybody but a technical vocational school would apply for this grant, but there's a process by which we had to submit a letter of intent that had to be approved to even then apply for the grant. our letter of intent was sent, and it was accepted, and they kept asking for more and more information, and I kept sending more and more information. I almost felt like, will you just stop applying? You're not the right kind of school. But we have approval now to go into the full grant application. I don't have any illusions based on those communications that they're gonna say, oh, Maynard High, please, here you go. But we are going to make the attempt, and I think even the process is worthwhile because it has us thinking in terms of the structures we're gonna need to have in place to have a Chapter 74 program in the future.
Yeah, and I just want to thank the town administrator for sharing that grant with us. We all received it kind of on a short date notice, but, big thanks to Chuck and his team, including Aaron helped out, and Jennifer. The fact that on a short, John Malik as well, on a short dated item, they worked hard on it, and the opportunity is there. So I really appreciate it. I just wanted to highlight that you actually got to the next stage, which is in itself great, just to hear that you're doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes the presentation, if there are any questions. No, it doesn't. Sorry, that one. Next steps. What are we doing next? So the other big part of what we're doing is work that, we're heading up with the community. We have dozens of community members that are participating in some community task forces, which is a really, we need a better name because the plural of task force is just hard to say. But we're really working on all three of these areas. So what we just talked to you about was what we're working on with teachers in the schools when we have time together to do that work. But that's not going to accomplish all of the things that we wanted to. So the work with the community is really looking forward and looking ahead. And so we're working on creating a committee to look at social emotional learning and different areas and perspectives that we want to bring in and how we do that best for Maynard. We're working on 2 academic pathways. One of them will be a STEM pathway where we're just exploring what that might mean for Maynard. We're going to get some community on board. Sharon Seller, who is the principal here, led a STEM school in her previous district, and so to have that expertise and that knowledge is great. And then we are also working on the world language pathway, which will eventually become sort of the global competency pathway. We are targeting a December 1st presentation or perhaps a December 15th presentation to all of you to make some community recommendations around world language K through 8 and then 9 through 12 as well. We have a communications task force that is moving forward and it nicely parallels the work that the Fowler School Council is doing. Jean LaBelle, who is one of our amazing teachers at the high school, is volunteering to head that up, and she has done a lot of work in her academic programs over structures of communication. So she has a wonderful structure that she's using that's research-based that's shown to improve student achievement in creating homeschool partnerships. So they've met a few times and are working on that. And then finally, we will be launching and creating the advisory council for the Chapter 74 vocational program for WAVM. That's one of the key steps in getting Chapter 74 approval. So we'll be looking to do that, and that will include both our teachers, or it will include our teachers, community members, and also industry experts to make sure that our programming is top-notch and really at the forefront of the communications field. So that will be starting in the spring. So those are the next steps for what we'll be doing for next year and the years after that. So we just wanted to give you that update. Now we're done.
I just, because we have 2 of our 3 principals here, I wanted to put this plea out in terms of data collection, because I know we're doing a lot with data. So I attended a presentation in June given by a man from the Gallup organization, and this figure, this statistic that he shared with us is stuck in my head. But he just said that there are these 2 statements that Gallup has found are the strongest indicators of student engagement in school. And they're these. So it's asking kids, do you strongly disagree, are you neutral, do you agree, strongly agree. I have one teacher who makes me excited about the future. It's the first one. And then my school is committed to building the strengths of each student. And students who strongly agree with both of those are 30 times more likely to be engaged in school than other students. And when I'd given the presentation about my trip, I really think that we need to measure what we value, and I know there are a lot of things we have to measure that the state forces us to measure, but I would really love to see us find some measure of both student engagement, but also teacher engagement at each building level, because the strongest predictor of teacher engagement is the principal, is the head of the school too. But I think to be able to have statistics about some of those measures, in addition to all the great data we're collecting, I'd love to see us do something in that direction.
I guess that leads a little bit into, I think that it's very exciting to see what's happening and to hear about it. This is what I love about what we do. And the other piece of it to me is just understanding, how do you know, what's the process that you have in place so that you know how you're doing with these and progress. And I imagine that you have, and again, that relates back to the data and accountability.
So each of the initiatives is going to have their own sort of benchmarks that we'll be looking for along the way. But one of the things that I'm working with the state on is really devising those strategic plans that look for, instead of just the final results at the end, but how can we tell what are the, and I'm blanking on the name of what they're called, but essentially they're
Milestones
individual steps along the way that can show progress. And then once you have them, whether you're meeting it or not, what next steps can you take in terms of doing that? So we're really looking at creating some of those specific structures for all of the district pieces, and that's something that we're working with our teachers on as well. I do want to say, in terms of the social emotional piece, one of the things that has come out with the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, or Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, or whatever we want to call it now. ESSA, the second No Child Left Behind. In terms of all of those pieces, is that they are looking for a complete measure of student success, not just the academic measures. And the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is looking for how we do that. And so if Maynard is out in the forefront of that, I think that will be a good thing for us. I know Dr. Girardi's organization, the school superintendents, is really making a plea that they not come down with sort of a formalized assessment in the same ways that we have MCAS, but instead really allowing us to use this data in some of those ways. So we will absolutely pass those on. And I think those would be great, especially for the advisory at the high school. Because that's what they're looking for, is some measures to see, okay, so we said this is what it was intended to do, how can we evaluate the success of that? So that would be great. The engagement is clear. I think we've seen that, and we'll see, if that continues, and I imagine it will. And the next part is then, are we meeting the goals of actually getting more kids attached to teachers, and attached to their peers? So.
That's what I meant to say, that actually, Chuck, it was what you were saying about the advisory program. I thought that's fantastic. And it also made me think of this in terms of what we do, what we're gathering data on, of measuring that, because I think it's wonderful. It sounds like we're doing a lot of things that support that.
Well, and I think I also like the taking a growth mindset to this whole approach, because if you're going to try something new, it may not work the first time around, but we should be able to try it as a district, and you should be able to have that leeway to be able to try it. So the first time you ask people that question, and if you were asking these questions from the advisories the first year, people wouldn't have experienced anything out of the advisories, right? But to have some milestones along the way, and then where do you go from here? Because I think it's really important to be able to not just look at where we want to end up, but we need to find the ways to get there, and have some real ties and things that we're measuring, because we value the process and the steps to get there and the effort, and then being able to have ways to measure that process to help then guide along the way and look for other tools and strategies when that's the thing to do. So I really applaud everything that you guys are doing, and look forward to what comes next and hearing more about it.
I just had a couple general questions, just in terms of, if you can remind me, just, nothing extensive, but just sort of how each school develops a plan, like the involvement, staff involvement, parent involvement, how many meetings? Roughly, I'm looking for rough, but just sort of, especially a lot of people don't know how we develop these plans.
Right, absolutely. So the school councils, we're trying to hone our vocabulary here and call it the same thing as each building. The school councils are organizations that are created each year, and they have a specific membership. And essentially what happens is that in each building, they come together in the fall, talk about the progress from the year before and establish the goals for the year ahead. And then as the year goes on, evaluating those goals, evaluating where they are and meeting those goals, and then at the end of the year, doing sort of analysis from there. One of the things that we've talked as a leadership team about is how do we tie in sort of the district improvement plan, our strategic mission with the school site councils so that it's all coming together. Previously, some of you may have sat and participated in school committee meetings that I've heard about. I didn't participate in that went for a long time because each of the school improvement plans had 7 or 8 initiatives that may have been individual to that individual building. And what we're really looking to do is acknowledge the needs of each individual building, but make sure that we're operating as a district. So I don't know if Don or Chuck, if you want to address some of the specifics about who's on the council and how many meetings and such.
Yeah, I'm not looking for, all the little minutiae, but just, just so people know how these are developed, and they're not just developed by, Jen and principal or Carol, and, just some general feedback for folks.
So, if you know the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, like the principal is the head, but the school site council is the neck. Kind of who's what you look at. That's good. Have you heard that analogy? Okay. The school site council at the high school is made up of equal numbers of teachers and parents and students and some additional community members. And any of those constituencies can kind of bring concerns to the table. And we're also charged under the state statute to review things like the school mission statement each year. We're charged with looking at the handbook each year. So there's some mechanical things we do. But what enters when you have all these constituencies are the concerns of all these constituencies. So teachers might bring in the topic, writing. We really need to get going on writing. Students might bring in concerns about the school disciplinary code, or what the heck is going on in advisory in years 1 and 2. And so that gives us a charge within the school to start to examine it. The council does not do the in-depth examination as a council, but as the principal chairing the meeting, I then come out and say, okay, let's get the appropriate group of people together to work on this particular topic. And let's try to keep it to 1 or 2 or 3 things a year so that we can do them well rather than, going a mile wide and getting nothing done on anything. And I think that's the essence of the process.
And I'll just add, school site councils came out at the end of formal law in 1993, but they were designed to give people in the trenches an opportunity to have voice and to guide the discussion. And I know that our principals take it seriously and have developed excellent councils, so.
That's great. PBIS, is that something you're rolling out with Responsive Classroom, or is that sort of on the side for now? Or
No, so the social, emotional, and Carol, you can probably address this more specifically. The social. So we've been working very closely, and we can take a field trip down to our office that has a nice diagram on our board about. I'm not actually suggesting we do that. But what we've been looking at is social emotional learning is sort of this big umbrella piece, and then what are we doing underneath that? We have elements that we've been doing in Maynard for a long time, the Responsive Classroom, and some of the other pieces, the advisory model fits within that component that we're doing as well. But what we want to do is really look again systematically. And so I think what we're looking at is PBIS, or positive behaviors, interventions, and supports, really identifying those common expectations. So what are the expectations for students when they walk through the hallways, when they're in the cafeteria, being really clear about what those expectations are so that students have a chance to be able to meet them. And that includes within the classroom spaces and goes all the way up through interactions with peers, from the little guys all the way up through the high school. So that's sort of the PBIS structure. And then within that structure, what we'll be doing is identifying what supports are we putting in place so that we can help students to meet those expectations. And there's a variety of those. So Responsive Classroom is one that gives us sort of setting the expectations and some language that we can help students to do that. What happens when they're not meeting the expectations? We went to a conference on, I'm gonna get the name wrong, but it's essentially collaborative problem solving.
A collaborative and proactive solutions.
Collaborative and proactive solutions. Dr. Ross Green, who's a phenomenal presenter, really looking at this idea that behavior is sending a message, that students are communicating through behavior, and adults, we do it too. We communicate through our behaviors, and so when we're encountering a challenging behavior, looking at what's causing that behavior so that we can address the cause rather than address the symptom, which is the behavior. So that's one of the things that we are looking at. The other piece that we are looking at, especially for up at the more sort of middle school, up at the high school level, we've talked a little bit about is this restorative justice concepts, restorative practices. The idea that instead of if I break a rule, I get punished, it's if I do something, I'm committing a harm to someone or to something, and I need to right that harm. And how do we talk and have conversations with students and to students and students amongst each other to restore some of that collegiality and collaboration and just sort of being nice to each other, which I think we could all agree we need. So that's all a part of it. Did I miss any of the structures?
No, I think you got it all.
Okay. It's a really nice diagram.
Come visit any day.
And then I just had two quick comments. So Donna, I just wanted to share that I was at Green Meadow recently and I bumped into Mrs. Arcelay and she was explaining that the art that was on the walls in front of me was from the Growth Mindset book. And oddly enough, I have a background in art and it still didn't make sense to me, but I was just so impressed that like people are embracing, I mean, you're gonna, read all sorts of different books and they'll all connect with different people in different ways. But I was just so impressed just to see that. And I've heard a lot of people talking about it. Obviously, we hear about it here, but I'm also hearing about it from staff and from parents. And then just I want to compliment Chuck. I love that we have a principal who is able to see that something's not working and immediately say, all right, what else? Like that flexibility is that's an amazing thing that you're doing. Like we just don't always see that. Not necessarily in school, but in life. Just the fact that you can look at something and say, it's not working, let's tweak it. I really appreciate that. I think that says so much about you and your leadership at the school. So thank you for sharing that. More questions for me?
It's been covered.
Yeah, great job. Do you need us to formally do anything?
No.
Great.
It's informational.
Central office relocation plan.
Okay, our architect, Perkins Plus Lowe, will Freemas, provided me with some initial drawings of two locations that we discussed in the past. We just got to meet today. I think there might be some in the back for the folks. These are really just initial drawings, and we're actually working on some minor changes to the second floor location. So these are really just an update at this point, because we've been discussing it, and we've said we really have to get moving on this. But she believes that for our December 1st school committee meeting, that she should be able to have the final drawings and the construction costs for each of those drawings. In addition, Michelle and I are working on the moving costs that would be involved in regards to moving the central office, the 8th grade and the 5th grade, and any incidental costs like phone, security, data, furniture, those sort of things. So we're hoping to have all that data for you on the 1st of December, but I just wanted to give you a little taste of what where it's going, because we did have some significant discussions already beginning this year, just to narrow it down to these two locations. I want to show you what the locations are looking like, and then I'm hoping that we're going to have enough data for you to make an informed decision, hopefully at our next meeting, or definitely by the end of December, because we really do want to notify, and I know it's been your intention, to notify the parents and teachers as early as possible if this change is going to go through for next September. So that's the timeline. These are some initial drawings, and this is really just an update for tonight. But I'd be happy to field any questions if you had them.
It's not so much I'm looking at the drawings and looking at the square footage, and I still, because I'm thinking about the budget, I still want to look at our administrative costs and the size of our administrative office, especially looking at the increase. I know we're talking about the budget next, but looking at the increase from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. So I don't know how much can be changed once the architect, and I know, time is of the essence and we have to move ahead with this. But I just still want us to be careful about taking more space than we need in the high school.
We have a budget subcommittee meeting coming up.
Yeah.
Between now and then, I do know Michelle's been doing some incredible research into our budget and trying to figure out why, you identified that it looked like our administrative costs are heavy. She actually found, and I talked to you and we talked about it at the last meeting, that sometimes it's the way you code things, that it may not actually mean that, that the actual physical positions that you have are more than anywhere else. So we're gonna do a deep dive on that at the budget subcommittee meeting, so you'll have that information before you make this decision. But I'm pretty excited about the work that Michelle's doing. I can't wait for her to share. We're gonna share some tonight later on, but she's been already preparing for the budget subcommittee, and that question that you would ask, she has an answer.
That's great. Thank you.
Nothing is pressing. I can wait.
Anyone on Falmouth? Just making sure I know that one. We're good. I'm going to move on to school committee priorities. So we have tabled this one due to lack of a number of school committees members being here at the same time. So we're all here, and I've had feedback that I believe everyone in general, just that Jen and Bob and everyone else would like to know our priorities. And we've had some, initial discussions, and I think anything we can sort of nail down and give them some guidance on. I mean, I feel like we've seen so many individual school plans and district plans and Jen's curriculum plan that's been developed with so much input. And now we have Carol and we have everybody. But I think people are just looking for us to weigh in on, what are we looking for this year? And just to back up really briefly, last year our biggest focus really was taking breath and creating the vision for Maynard moving forward. And we did a lot of outreach. We had a ton of parent input. Hopefully we had a ton of staff input. It seemed like it. We had lots of open meetings. We had book readings. We had talks. We had more talks. So I think we had a really great year on vision. And now it's time to talk about sort of where we'd like to be at the end of whatever we want to call it, the end of the year, the end of the school year, wherever it is. So I'll turn it over to you folks. So we talk about priorities.
I'm inspired by the schools when they're saying that, it's better to come up with a couple things than to have too many. And I think that we have talked about so many things. But I feel a lot of it falls under our concern with social emotional growth for all kids at all school, all three schools. So I would love to make that, an umbrella topic, and maybe underneath that we come up with other things as well. But I want to hear what's on others' minds.
I'm on board with you. Like we live in such a testing and accountability culture right now that I think it's far too easy to focus on the nuts and bolts of education. They have to learn to this standard, they need to do this skill by this certain time, that I think it's easy for us to forget that they're people that are growing. And if we could find natural pauses or opportunities for them to just breathe, be kids, have some unstructured time whenever possible, maybe be allowed to self-select some activities, rather than being dictated to all the time, I think that would be really awesome.
I think we've kind of, since the first No Child Left Behind, swung way over to this. Everything's very structured and like the rigor has moved down 2 grade levels and just so much that's expected and it's, I think, we need to almost self-correct to balance it out again. I don't think that it's bad to have that academic rigor. It's an important piece of it. And the data is an important piece, and we've been working on really using data and getting the data engaged, but then self-correcting back a little bit, I think that balance piece. And the growth mindset, I did actually read the entire book, and I'm just really totally on board with trying to see what we can do at every level, not just for the students, but for the teachers as well, because they are the people they are pivotal. They're just pivotal. And so where do you start from with them and what they're doing in their classes that they're excited about to make sure that we all have the joy of learning in each day, and that's where the excitement and the engagement happens, right? So what does that really look like? And I think that we have a lot of different initiatives going on that are going to start looking at that, but I'd really like to see, I'd love the idea of somehow being able to ask the teachers just what are you excited about learning as a teacher and teaching to your kids and as a person? And that's what I think the advisories got at the high school level. So that's one of the things I'd like to see is I haven't heard us as much, and I'm sure it's happening in other ways that I may not even be aware of, you know, but make sure that that's a piece of this moving forward. And that growth mindset does include all kids, because the kids on the bottom end, quote unquote, the underperformers, or there's a way in which you start from them and help them recognize that they can learn strategies and tools and they can grow and build their minds. And on the upper end, if they've never had to because they could coast by because it just was easy and they weren't challenged, they too don't have the idea that they actually think that, oh no, I'm just smart and I don't know how to, if I'm challenged in being smart, the Growth Mindset book talks about how just by virtue of having this idea that you have to protect some sense of smartness and this fixed trait of yourself, you aren't able to think of just growing and learning and the joy of it. And so it's for all students, this sense of how do we get them to be challenged and excited and grow and engaged. So I really think that that's the place where we should be.
So I'd say that for my priority, and maybe it's the cynic in me, but I think, unfortunately, it all starts with the financial resources. So all the things that we want to do, which are all great ideas, and I'd love to see them all implemented. Mine is more, I guess, concrete from the standpoint of, and I don't have the answer, certainly, but how can we not do a better job with the budget, but maybe streamline the process, maybe make it more efficient, having better communication with the Board of Selectmen and things like that, so that way with the budget process where things don't kind of sneak up on us. But really, unfortunately, it's the thing that we don't like to talk about, but we need to talk about it, and we end up talking about it quite a bit because it is unfortunately the foundation for everything that we want to do. So for me, that's always been my biggest frustration, is that trying to have it so that we can have the vision to say, okay, this is where we want to take the district, but actually having the financial means to do so, rather than just coming up with these grandiose ideas and then that's all they are, is grandiose ideas. So how do we, implement it from a budgetary standpoint? And like I said, unfortunately, I don't have the answer. I mean, it's kind of a loaded question, but yeah, I'm working on that. So I think a lot of it has to do with some of the things that we'd like to see, like obviously staff retention, things like that. We get people that are good and we want to keep them. We don't want them to just, jump ship if we have to make cuts and another district is offering higher wages or whatever it might be. So that's really my, biggest issue is how can we, going forward, just, I guess, I wouldn't say be more fiscally responsible, because I don't think we're irresponsible, but how can we kind of lay things out for, how do we get to the point where every year we're talking about, here are the things that we'd like to add, or here are the things that we would like to bolster, rather than here's the tally sheet of the things that we have to consider cutting, and this is how much we have to cut. So just get to that point where it's how do we add things rather than how do we take away and make do with less.
And I appreciate the pragmatic. We have to tackle the budget, but one of the things that I think about too, and I think it falls under, again, a lot of the stuff we talk about with kids, is teacher retention. And Chuck mentioned when he was here, he said, well, we've had a lot of turnover at the high school. And when I look at our teacher salaries, I don't know how competitive we are. I don't think, I think it depends where you are in terms of years of experience in the STEP system, but that concerns me. It concerns me when, and I know that we're not supposed to say people, aren't replaceable, and yet I feel like because schools are human, there's such a human element of teaching. I don't want to get to the place where each year we're looking at, oh, we gotta cut this person and this person, and it becomes it does become a dollar amount on a tally sheet. So I do think there's got to be some just tightening up of the budget, because I want to know where all the money goes, because the town has been relatively generous with us over the years.
So I'll put the budget stuff aside, because I feel like I don't disagree at all, and we'll be doing that all year, and I completely, I'm glad that you're bringing it up, because I think it goes into the whole, we can't just dream, we have to also fund. So what can we fund, and what's important, and what are our priorities? So I think we can take that forward, and I feel confident about that. Sort of as I've been sort of getting up to speed in my first year or so, and just really understanding more about the kids, the teachers, and needs at different buildings, and I have still so much to learn. What I'd love to just see us get back to, or start to focus on a little bit, and it ties, I think, into a lot of what we've said, so I don't think it's gonna be, I think someone's already said it. Sort of the joy of learning and the joy of teaching, so what are we, all the things that we wanna do sound great. When we talk to parents, when we have the talks, it sounds great. Can we get the kids outside more? Can we make sure recess isn't taken away as a punishment? What other forms of classroom discipline can be implemented, and things like that. So I'd love to just see us make some progress for the kids and the teachers, and I think we have lots of kids who are happy and lots of teachers who are happy, and then I think we have some that could be happier, and I'd love to find out more about what we can be providing. In terms of the kids, I've just learned so much more about how much anxiety there is at all different age levels, so not just Green Meadow by any stretch of the imagination, and a lot of what I saw at this conference was there's so much anxiety, kids show up anxious, and we expect them to be able to just leave it all behind and immediately start sitting down and focusing on work. And how much are they really taking in at that point, and how productive are they at that point? So I'm really excited to sort of bring some of what I saw to talk about maybe rolling it out at some point. And there's other districts I thought that would be great model districts for us to learn from. And this stuff was very low to no cost, to your point. I didn't go to the talks that involved big money. So anxiety, the joy of learning, the joy of teaching, and then just as far as meeting the needs of all learners, I think we focus a lot on certain situations, but I don't want to lose the high-end learners. I want to make sure that we're still focused on zone time, and not just saying we have zone time, and I'm not picking on Fowler, but just how do we measure that that's actually happening? And it's not that it's someone's fault if it's not happening, but if it's not happening in a classroom, and I'll just pick second grade, because I have a second grader, if the kids aren't getting any sort of differentiated instruction, then we're failing the teacher in some way, right? They either don't know how to do it, or they can't, and I don't mean it that way, that's not wrong, but just what supports do we need to have so teachers can provide differentiated instruction? Because I think that's a big part of our district. I mean, people are staying now. I think expectations are more. I think we always focus on sort of the squeaky wheels, but we should just not let any kids get lost in all of our grand talks and visions and great ideas. So I just want to meet the needs of all learners, and that means a lot of different things to me right now, but it's nothing I think we haven't talked about.
I wish Carol were still here, but I love when she was talking about the zones, and Jennifer too, when you were talking about it, because I feel like that supports so much of what we've been talking about, and what you're saying, Dawn, about anxiety, that kids can't learn if there are all these other things going on, and instead of just addressing and responding and reacting to the symptom, to really try to understand. I think that's huge. I love that we're on that path.
Just it's showing up at the college level too. I'm at BU and I get their newsletter and they're talking about how these, and I'm sure there's a bunch of things at play because we're recognizing anxiety symptoms more. It's more acceptable to admit you have them, but they're just seeing higher and higher levels of anxiety in the incoming students.
We're turning into an anxious society. Kindergartners, third
no, it's
graders,
true. I mean, it's true.
Seniors in high school.
It's true.
Adults. It's an epidemic right now.
Yeah.
And you stole my thunder with the differentiation.
Oh.
More and more and more and more. We can't have kids sitting bored in our classrooms. We can't have kids sitting unable to access the content in our classrooms.
Yeah. That's why I think we need to measure student engagement. It really, on some levels, and it's a hard thing to measure. But that's why I mentioned those two statements they found to be a good indicator. because I want to know. I really want to know that.
Yeah, I think that's the point now, is I think we've got this good sense of vision and some focus, and then what are the indicators that are gonna help us then to correct, and then also to recognize, I like the orientation around, if we're missing the mark, there's something we haven't gotten to give the teachers, there's some support or tool or strategy that, you know, they need to have a toolbox too, and what does that look like? And it's surely different every year with every student, and so, yeah. So I'm interested to see things like, I'd love to hear more about how these goals, how do we actually operationalize those and monitor those over time, things like that, because I think that those are the pieces that now will be able to help us really to put some teeth and understanding and direction to the things that we'd like to see happening.
So Jen and Bob, if you have any questions for clarification now, or if you want to digest it and let us know if anything was unclear or unmeasurable or
I think I got it.
We asked for a lot.
You know, it's really, it makes a lot of sense, because last year we did a lot of thinking and now it's time to do a lot of doing, right? And we need to measure what we're doing and make sure that what we're doing is working for kids and for teachers. I think there's a couple new pieces in here that, you know, we'll talk with the leadership team and we'll talk with the instructional leaders. The instructional leadership team, which includes teachers, about how we do some of that work for teachers in particular. Because I don't know that we've really had those conversations, at least at a system level. We've had them individually and in individual meetings. You know, so that's going to be a piece that we're going to need to explore and look at. And I know a bunch of different districts have done things around professional development where they allow teachers, not allow, that's the wrong word, where they provide the structure for teachers to be able to run their own professional development, planning different sessions. I know Lexington has a great model. Grafton has a model where each teacher team identifies a goal that they want to work on, and that's the goal that they sort of execute with check-ins and benchmarks and so on. And I think, you know, we can talk about that. I know one of the things that we've talked a lot about with the teachers I've talked a lot about with various groups of teachers is just the need for our teacher teams, and I mentioned this when I did our presentation on our accountability data, the time that our teacher teams need to be able to sit and talk about student work and identify what are the next steps and do some of those pieces. And right now in 2 of the 3 buildings, we don't have that time. And so really looking and thinking creatively and figuring out, you know, how can we provide that time? Because without that, you know, they really are, you know, sort of islands with their students that are, you know, maybe have a ship passing by their classroom that they can wave at and shout out a question to. So we need to provide that collaboration time and figure out how we do that.
I also, just in general, I mean, I think I want Maynard to be a district where teachers are dying to teach. Like, they really, really want to teach here. And because I think that that's the key. Like, we have talked so much about our student experience, and I think that's the natural place to go, right? From given where we've been talking.
And I do have to say, you know, Don, you mentioned Chuck and his leadership with his staff about allowing that growth mindset. I've seen that experiment, and when they brought to me the concept that they wanted to go to with advisory last spring, I was terrified. Not because of what they were doing. I thought it was a great concept, but because I've seen it go so poorly, because I've seen it go so poorly in other places. And so the fact that this is much more work for our teachers, the fact that teachers were willing to take this on because they knew it was in the best interest of students, I think is really a credit to them as well, and to the mindset they have. And I have to tell you, I have conversations in all 3 buildings about what can we do to make sure that we as a team are supported and our students are supported. We have an amazing staff here in Maynard, so.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot going on. That's why I think it'd be good to start picking some things that we're like really looking at indicators. Yes. And yeah.
So we'll definitely be coming back with some benchmarks and some reports over the year, and you know, about how we're doing on these 3 goals in particular, but then some of the other pieces as well.
I'd also like to add, I mean, that's the heart of the work we do. That's the part we love the most.
Yeah.
But Jamal, I know the mouse is getting everybody's attention.
Is there a mouse?
Oh,
it's a mouse.
He's been around forever too, because I noticed people looking at him.
I thought you said moth.
I will be sure to.
It's the most exciting movie.
I thought we weren't going to identify. Yeah, great, thanks. I'm trying to be professional.
We've got to get this. This has to go on the list now. We've got to get rid of the mouse.
point out, Jamal and Justin both talked about finance as well. And being the longest running school committee members on the team, you know we've come light years in what we're doing, what we've been doing in the past. But even the 6 years now that I've been on the school committee, we've moved really far in providing a lot of information. But I think it's time for us to start taking a stand on what we need. And I'm really excited because Michelle just gave you a whole bunch of data. And Dawn and I attended a workshop on transparency in budgeting so that when people do have questions, is our budget tight? Well, now I want to be able to prove it. Because I know how frugal we've been over the years, Justin and Jamal, and those chopping lists were, in order to do other priorities, we had to prioritize. I know how staffed we are, and I know that there's not this mysterious, fat in our district. The school committees that I've worked with have been very focused on that, but the key is, how do we demonstrate that for the town so we do get the support we need? And so we have to be better at that. And Dawn and I were at the Mass Conference, was amazing. I was able to attend actually it's kind of a segue into the next one, so I'll wait and talk more about budget later. But I just do feel that's a major piece of what has to get done.
There's another. There's more than
It's out
one?
of sight, Jen.
Hopefully it's happy.
We need a cat.
I mean, that would be a low cost solution.
Don can give us, you can give us yours.
The next drawings we get, they're gonna be moving to the high school. Anything on priorities, Mark? Before we move on to the budget?
Let's move.
Okay, so in regard, so we're on the budget?
Yeah.
Questions?
Nelson's like, kind of right. Yeah, move your bag. Oh, you know, the bags on the
You
floor.
might be taking them home.
Can we just smack him?
It was like right in the.
Is he in a place where we can just?
No, you can't do that.
Well, just in
Just in case.
I guess I call that solving the problem.
That's not humane. You can just keep.
It would be quick and painless.
Just not while I'm here. This is not.
What, do you want to hug it and like rub its head and tell it it's
No,
gonna
I
be
definitely don't. I don't want to. I really didn't want to acknowledge its presence, and now I'm
Everybody put your hands forward.
I'm all right, I'm all
There we go.
Okay. All right.
That's a low solution. Okay, well, I think it's close to the end of the, but because budget is so
Run the show.
Okay, but.
all right. So,
I captured it. No, it's not in there. I'm just kidding.
All right, budget, Bob.
budget.
Floor's yours, Bob.
Michelle and I listened intently at our last school committee, joint school committee board of selectmen meeting, to get an understanding of what financial information our community would like. Also, Dawn and I did attend the Mass Conference, where we learned, I attended a workshop on transparency and budgeting and about meritorious budget proposals. I'm pleased to announce that the budget proposal document that we prepared for the first time last year was in fact in line with many of the principles of a meritorious budget packet. So we were really onto something when we did it. However, we did learn some other principles that can improve it, like a budget package should have a third narrative, a third of it should be spreadsheets, and a third of it should be graphs and tables. So that's what we're going to work on to make it, improve it going into next year. I think you'll be impressed with some of the graphic representations that Michelle has produced for you tonight. I'm going to start off by talking about the first chart titled Fiscal Year 16% of expended by Responsibility Center. That's this pie chart right here. And the pie chart nicely shows the major areas of expense in our budget. By looking at this chart, you can see that we spend proportionally similar amounts of funding in each school of the school buildings and for special education services, which are divided evenly across all the school buildings, based on some of the other data you've had that shows the number of students. And that's not always the case in every other district. Some districts, they focus more money at the lower level. It always seems like the middle school kind of gets in the middle. But some districts will actually shift a lot of funding to the earlier ages, saying that if we do that, test scores are gonna rise, and then we don't have to worry about the kids later. And some school districts actually shift funding more to the high school, because oftentimes the high school is the flagship school of your district, and it's where kids culminate their high school, their 12 years, and so you wanna make sure at the very end that you're providing a lot of resources. But in this case, at least it does show that we're pretty even, and if we wanted to make those sort of decisions, we could in the future. But it is interesting information to know. The next pie chart is titled Fiscal Year 16 Total Expenditures All Funds. So at that last meeting, it was identified that the town actually spends a lot of different funding on education, not just the Maynard public schools. And so they felt that it would be important to keep information like this involved, which actually shows that funds are spent on education for all students in Maynard, including the indirect legally mandated costs that the town must supply, for things like healthcare. It's a law that it's there, they have to provide the healthcare for all employees of the town, even though technically our staff are some of those employees, and those are indirect costs to the town. But it's in here, so it shows what it actually costs for all of the town's costs. It also shows legally mandated costs for the town for charters and choice schools and vocational programs. So even though that isn't money that's spent here, and I want to be clear that this big chunk isn't going to the schools, it is going to the services for students in the town. And so it was suggested that we do that and put this together. But a question was raised at that meeting, again, about the frugality of our district and how we use our funding. And the question was, do we use our revolving funds appropriately? Are we storing these funds up? And the reality is this document shows you that we do use our revolving funds to supplement much of the education that we provide. Earlier we talked about, we use our transportation funds to offset the cost of transportation for parents. We use our sports and activity fees to offset the cost of activities. We've been doing that for a long time. We've used our school choice money to offset the cost of maintenance for our buildings. So it's very important data that actually shows that we're not stockpiling money, we're actually spending it on the schools. And it's money that we can't always count on. So this is great data. The third chart is titled Maynard versus State per pupil cost. And if you look at this chart, it shows that the school committee has actually been frugal with the increases in our appropriations each year. And as a result, our 2014 and 2015 per pupil costs have fallen below the state average. So, I'd like to bring you back to this chart that we share with the town, the fixed increases budget. At the bottom of that, it shows that each year, for the last, we only went back 4 years, but I know it's happened for 6 years, the school committee has been diligent to explain that we do have fixed increase costs. And each year, our actual increases haven't matched that. So I think this data right here shows why our per pupil has gone down, is because our fixed increases haven't been funded fully, and therefore, we've had to figure out, as Jamal said, what are we going to cut in order to keep, and what do we have to keep? And we've done that exercise every year. The last spreadsheet is a detailed expansion of the expense items that were listed on this fixed increase. So it's very detailed. It'll show you by line item, and even though it shows by line item, at some point, I think the budget subcommittee is going to work with Michelle on this to understand, well, what does that actually mean? Because sometimes, superintendent's copier, that's the obvious one. Some of these aren't, some of them aren't as obvious. And so, Michelle will be working with the budget subcommittee to review this type of data, but this is the type of data that I think the town has been asking for, but we can now add to our budget documents and hopefully make our budget proposal a meritorious budget proposal that we can be proud of and can be a model. So I can't thank Michelle enough for all the details she's been digging out for us, and I'm excited for the next budget subcommittee meeting to review some of this information and to really get to know our budget well and share it with people. So that's what I have to offer.
Thank you for the update.
a little bit of bad news. So on this document that we shared with the Board of Selectmen, it showed our fixed budget, our fixed increase at 5.9%. When Michelle went digging through here, she has some explanations as to why some things had to be changed. But it's gone up from 5.9% to 6.4%, which is the very last number. So,
I'm sorry.
that's where we're at.
It's on camera. I don't care.
But, it's important for us to continue to show that we are examining it, we're re-examining it, we're trying to figure out where we can save. And we do have some avenues that Michelle and I have been investigating that we could possibly save, so we're hopeful that we're gonna come out with some positive information and reduce that, but we have to give you the good news and the bad news. Now we're done.
You had to end on that?
I know. It is what it is. Need more words of closure.
Michelle, thank you for these are great.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you. This is really, really.
There's more.
No, that's good. This is what we've been needing for a long time.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking that charge and running with it.
No problem.
Questions, or just want to digest?
I need to chew on that a little
Yeah.
bit. That's a lot to look at.
Any questions?
Hello.
Hello, my name is Miles Bessie. My daughter is a student at Green Meadow. So I was considering whether I could comment earlier or now. They all seem to kind of feed in together. So I'm here in part because my daughter is so the very personal reason I'm here is because my daughter is struggling with I think some of the disruptive behavior that's going on in her classroom, right? So, there's a classroom size of 20 kids with one teacher, which on its face sounds very high. So, you have 2, 3 disruptive kids, and it has a serious impact for the rest of the class, and my daughter's one of them. And it's to the point where she's saying, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school. She's 7. I didn't expect to have this conversation with her until she was like 12. And look, as parents, we try to teach her, you're going to have to deal with people who don't behave well your entire life. There's that part of the conversation, but then the other side of it is what's going on here. So that has sort of led into conversations with other parents at Green Meadow who've been experiencing similar things with their children. And this isn't to make it a kids who are behaving versus kids who are not behaving kind of a conversation. But I did have what I thought was a very productive meeting with some of the staff at Green Meadow. And that involved my daughter's teacher, the assistant principal, and then also one of the counselors. And I think what I've really started to learn is a couple things. And, sitting here listening to you, there's an incredible amount of sophisticated, from my perspective, sophisticated analysis that you're doing and sort of these plans. But what I'm not hearing on the ground level is sort of, you're not putting people in place who can actually execute them, right? There's no guidance counselor, right, at the Green Meadow School. As I understand it, earlier this year, there was a decision made to keep a teacher at Fowler, but let go of a teacher at Green Meadow, which to me sort of feeds into this larger class size. So, and then to come here and hear that you don't have your handle on the budget, I think is concerning, but if I'm being honest with you, it's mind-blowing, right? So, it's, I guess I just need to understand more about how, as a community, or as a school district, we can have sort of these very, very grandiose plans, and I love grandiose plans, but at the same time, where I live and where I'm seeing it, the execution is not there because I think the resources are not there in order to execute these plans, right? Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah. So as the longest sitting member of this board,
Yeah.
I can tell you that every year that I've been a member of this community, we have agonized over what we have had to cut and not what we have been able to add.
Right.
So a lot of the things that you heard us talking about tonight are things that are already in place, and we're trying to do the best with the resources that we have. So when you bring the attention to the guidance counselor at Green Meadow, there was about a 3 or 4 meeting period in the springtime where we had to make some very difficult decisions.
Yeah.
So it's part of a larger community-based conversation on, we're getting to the point where we don't have anything left to cut. So I don't like your statement, actually, when you say like that we don't have a handle on the budget, because I don't think that's fair to the people that are sitting here. Like, we have a very good handle on the budget. Like, we know what we spend down to like paper clips. The problem is we don't have enough to spend. So like the characterization that we don't have a handle on it, I don't think is fair. But I will acknowledge that we have a very serious budgeting problem in this town. Like, and that is something that we are working with the Board of Selectmen on. You know, I think you heard someone earlier say, we're at that point now where we need to be much more clear on what we need rather than asking for certain things, because that's historically what we've always done. We say to the town, this is how much we need, and then they tell us how much we have. And historically, those numbers have never lined up for us, at least in my 4 years on this board. So I hear you. I have a daughter who has significant school anxiety, and I wish I had more resources for her as well. But the harsh reality of the situation is we had to make a very difficult choice in the spring. And that was just part of the conversation that we had over a very long period of time.
Can I add something too? Because it was a little tough for me to hear about grandiose plans, because I love the visionary work we've done for 6 years. And it's really accelerated in the last year because we've really embraced the community too. But a lot of the innovation that's occurred in this district is usually low cost to no cost. Or it's only grant money seeded or found some way to get started. The innovation isn't what's expensive. The grandiose ideas aren't what's expensive. You're welcome to have these charts. I don't know if there was extras, but if you look at the per pupil, you can have these. You know, just look at that chart. That might explain a little bit of the problem. Look at this chart right here. Yeah, absolutely. The public documents. That's what we're talking about. Not that the town hasn't been generous, and in every district, you have, even in good times, you have these priority discussions because, I let our assistant superintendent talk about, we are doing a lot on social emotional learning. We are doing a lot on behavior. When I started here, we didn't even have teachers trained across the board in a responsive classroom. We had teachers, veterans who have been trained, but we didn't keep up with it. Now we keep up with it, and we actually have a plan where they do keep up with that. So we are actually improving the professional development we have for teachers. We're actually being more consistent with the plans. There was a time when there was a thought where, teachers don't need textbooks because everything they need to know is in the computer. And we've reversed that. We've done a lot of improvements to the Maynard Public Schools and provided a lot of resources for teachers. But we have to, nothing's perfect. We have to improve it. And, we did an in-depth study on class sizes and the resources that we have and the number of teachers and paraprofessionals that we have in our district compared to other similar districts and compared to in our region. We're doing the best we can with what we have, and of course we want to add more and improve it, but we are doing a lot. Maynard's a pretty impressive place.
And yet, I hear you as a parent. I mean, I think
On a lot of levels.
there are days where, with my son last year, where he just it seemed like he just didn't like school anymore. And I don't think that for him it wasn't necessarily because of disruptive behavior in the classroom, but it was, I think, the demands. When we talk about anxiety for kids and the rigor of school and what they're asked to do now. So my heart goes out to you as a parent because we want our kids to love school. And I think that's why for me, I'd love to see us looking at that, at those indicators of student levels of engagement. Because if we are finding that out, that at Green Meadow, there are a lot of kids who are saying, we don't want to go to school, or then we know, okay, then there's something we've got to look at there because it's not just an isolated incident, it's a systemic thing. So I appreciate hearing that because it makes me want to know more.
I feel like
I have to tell you, I hear a lot of comments about I just don't hear how these things are actually get executed. Right? I've heard a lot of talking about priorities and things like that.
Yeah.
I have no idea how any of these things are going to get executed.
So one of the focuses that we definitely have as a district, going back at least through, I haven't been here very long, but social emotional learning, what that means to me, one of the things that means to me as a parent and an administrator, is the idea of one facet to me, and maybe I'm wrong, is classroom management, because the classes are diverse, to say the least. So what I'm hoping and what I referred to is making sure that we give teachers what they need. Now, I don't think that that's always extra bodies in a room, because we have lots of classes with many adults nowadays, but kids and their needs and things like that. But I'm sincere when I say, if the teachers tell us they need training in, name a technique, right? Name a technique to manage your classroom better. I'm not a teacher, I don't know the names, but they're out there. Then we provide that training, we provide that professional development. So it may sound like it doesn't really have any teeth, but we've been talking about social emotional learning.
Responsive classroom, the
Yeah, that's all
PBIS stuff.
that means, and I get it, like I had to learn all this jargon over the past year, it's a lot, but there's, and I have a kid in the class too, who, yeah, I mean, I hear you as a parent, because I understand the diverse classrooms are creating challenges, and teachers will consistently need to have training to increase what they have for tools to deal with that, and I speak as a parent when I say that.
Again, what I keep hearing here is tools and other things. At the end of the day, there are too many students per classroom.
20 to 1 teachers, you will
It's
find
not,
that's not.
it's not unusual.
That's not, it's just not, I mean, we went,
In any community.
I only say because we really looked at this last year, people said the same thing last year. It's just not, you can look at any other district and you're gonna see the same numbers. It's not-
Demographically similar towns, I mean, we have that data.
But no, I do have.
No, that's good, thank you.
Other questions? Citizens' comments? And members' comments? All right.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm speaking as a parent who came to the meetings last spring, and also I'm the president of PTO Green Meadow. And just what I hear on the ground, I'm completely naive to the budgeting process and the schedule and how you guys started and go through it. But as you all fondly remember, I'm sure that some of those meetings last year that got really heated in the spring, it was parents finding out like, oh, this stuff is happening and I have to go to a meeting now. Now with the new Facebook page the district has and just sort of the efforts to increase communication, just a suggestion is, and for myself as well, get out there sooner to maybe, not invite, but make people aware. Like people know there are school committee meetings, but they don't really know. It's not on their agenda, they're not thinking about it. And people came to that one where it was like overflowing in here because someone posted on Facebook and it went, it blew up. But I think it would be helpful because I remember, like Mary, I remember in a meeting you saying, these are things like the guidance counselor being cut at Fowler, like we didn't realize that was, sort of like for you guys as far as community feedback, knowing class size is a huge thing on people's minds, just a different community comments might be helpful in your process in terms of what families feel are priorities. Again, I'm completely naive to how your process works and the timing, but instead of it being in May when you guys are always like, okay, this is the budget, just sort of making sure people are aware, this is a school committee meeting, it's happening in February, and these are the things we're thinking about, and I know people don't trust me. I know people don't read stuff, people don't, prioritize, but at least getting it out on the Facebook page and things like that. And then the second thing is that a lot of people have said to me is last year people came to those meetings, and then we sort of never heard like, well, what money did we get from the state? What were the things that were cut? I mean, I know personally having a student at, one of my kids is here and 2 are at Green Meadow, like I knew how it affected their specials. But I knew the guidance counselor that was supposed to be gone was kind of back, but what was she back at? So maybe even like after all the budget is finalized and just sort of a document or something that said, okay, this was everything that was on the table, this is what happened, this is what didn't happen. Just to sort of improve communications with families. I think it would be.
No, it's great feedback. We've been talking about how to sort of change some of the content in Bob's weekly message, because Bob represents the whole district, not just one school.
Right.
And a lot of the things you're talking about affect more than one school.
Right.
So we've been talking about, since this conference especially, what are some tools and what can we deliver for messages? So hearing what's the desire is helpful as we look to sort of rebrand his blog a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Also, with regards to class size, I'm sorry that Mr. Clancy's gone, so I can't address this to him too. But at curriculum committee, we brought that, we raised that issue. We said last year we heard loud and clear, we want to look at class sizes. And we did get a preliminary estimate of what that would cost to the budget if we were to try to reduce class sizes at Green Meadow. And if I remember correctly, it was around $360,000 to reduce, I think it was to add a class section for each grade or something along those lines. And it was sort of daunting when we know what we had to cut last year and looking at the dollar price tag, but it's not out of the conversation. Like, it's still.
I mean, nothing's off the table.
Mayor, I was hoping to say that to Mr. Clancy as well.
Yeah,
which is,
but
it's actually not off the table. We want to say, this is something that our community has asked for, reduced class sizes. We are keeping it here to be frugal because of the documents I showed him.
Right.
Because we have to be frugal because our per pupil's down. But this is what our community, we want to voice what our community is expressing to us.
Right, and just the, like, I attended all those meetings, so I knew the discussion about class size.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he probably was there, so he didn't hear all that. So for me, like, originally, I was like, my son told me he's in first grade, he just told me yesterday, Mom, I got another new kid, and I was like, so what does that take you up to now, But I know from the conversations last year, like, that's average, and I can't complain, and that's, that's where we are. We're lucky. My son's in 6th grade. He has like 16 kids in the class. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, I can appreciate it, but people who haven't been part of that conversation. So I just think, I feel like a couple times during the meetings last year, it was kind of like, wow, I wish, and no offense to you guys, but like, oh, wow, I didn't realize these were priorities for people. Or, for me, my son, my 6th grader, like, he really needed that guidance counselor. She was his rock last year. And when she was being cut, I was devastated because she was his rock. She got him through a lot of last year.
Yeah.
But, if you don't have a child who's experiencing, everyone has their own priorities, obviously. But I think, anyway, my point is, if you just like make sure the community is aware that these discussions are happening earlier, so that in May, when it says, okay, this is what we're doing, people aren't exploding.
Yeah. What's hard in hearing, hearing a comment is he was talking about our grandiose plans, and I'm like, well, yes, we have them. We like to have these visioning meetings where we dream big, but at the same time, I think we are making these hard decisions. And so with response to the class size issue, it's frustrating. I know before.
Responsibility is both. You
Yeah.
need to have
Yeah.
visions,
Yeah.
grandiose, and
Right.
you also have to do the budget and say,
Yeah.
this is the best.
We just happen to have them both at the same meeting. So
Yeah, right,
it's not
right, right.
And the tough reality is 20, I'm not saying, I mean, I could never teach, so I couldn't have more respect for teachers. I can have one in my house. It's hard, but it's unfortunately very normal. Now, I might not like it as a parent, and I might have to make different decisions, but I've talked to colleagues and parents and other towns, it's not abnormal. I'm not saying I like it, but we're not doing something,
My cousin in California, her daughters have 35 kids in their class.
Yeah,
And
I'm not
they're
defending
in
that.
4th grade and one teacher.
Right.
And which is not, I mean, that's not great either.
That's
But
not,
it's
right.
That doesn't count the
It's
age
not
of
like
the
you're
fall
saying,
the
let's
kids
do that.
around.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
not defending anything, it's just.
And I think part of what I was hearing from him is, he hears all this big picture, but when you have a child who comes home and says, I don't want to go to school, I don't like school, you need like the brass tacks of like, it needs another body in there, they need help, they need support. And so it's like, well, teachers are doing professional development, but my daughter's still upset, so I think for him it was like, it's more just the daily reality versus your responsibility.
But that is the bottom line too, though, is being able to say, we have all these great ideas, but it's meant to be at the service of each and every student.
Right.
And we're not going to necessarily be able to do that because it's kind of a huge challenge. And that's the same with the teachers in the classroom. Like, it's a huge challenge to ask them to be at the service of each and every student, right? But we're still committed to doing that. And that's what matters together. And sometimes we won't hit it, but we need to know that too. And then how do you help that individual to be able to find their paths to try to get the support? And
what's hard too, I just feel like it's hard being a public servant. I know before I got involved and coming to these meetings and I just didn't realize they were all volunteer positions. I just didn't.
I hear you. We're not on PTO, I'm like, wait.
Right. Yeah, but I think what's hard is sometimes with the scope of our power, like we can set policies for the district and we oversee the budget and we hire the superintendent. So we have some power, but we don't have power over an individual classroom. But we can look at systemic issues. So we can look at class size. We can't change class size tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
We just can't.
The other piece that I think is really important for the community to hear as well is, in terms of the social emotional, We have some grandiose plans, sure. I've said before that in Maynard we're doing things that I couldn't even talk about in other districts because we have an amazing community, and those are things that are already here. They're not things that we're bringing in. In terms of the social emotional piece and in addressing sort of challenges, you all can have the conversation around class size, and the community can make the decision that it wants to make around class size. Having worked in education my entire life, I mean, a class size of 20 is not only not abnormal, most people wouldn't call it large professionally in looking at it. But we can have the conversation and talk about what we want to do, and we can fund it or not. What I look at, though, in terms of the challenges that individual students are having is what are we doing as a systematic fix? So it's not just one person in one room with one child, or two children who are struggling, but instead, how are we setting expectations so that students know what those expectations are? How are we setting structures in place so that students are able to meet those expectations? That it may sound like it's lofty or hyperbole or just sort of this nebulous, we're going to talk about it type thing. That's really what's going to make a difference. I mean, there is so much research on the specific interventions and strategies that are working in districts that have students with far more students that we do with very different lives and very different challenges, and more students in a classroom space and fewer resources, and the types of things that we're looking at have worked there with students who are going to schools with metal detectors because there's guns on their streets. So there's a lot of things that we're working at and looking at systematically that will work for our students. And if we do it as a Band-Aid approach, we're going to wind up spending a lot of money and not getting a lot of effect. What we need to do is instead look systematically and say, how do we make sure that every student is safe? How do we make sure that every student has an opportunity to learn? And how do we make sure that every teacher has what they need in order to do that? So that's the other piece for me, just sort of sitting here, is it's not just sort of these big ideas. The ideas that we're talking about are really going to target the specific challenges and the struggles that are being addressed. So that's just my 2 cents.
Before Anne sits down, though, can we just make an agreement that come January or February, we follow through on Anne's suggestions and maybe put on an agenda item to have like an open house style agenda item to say, come talk to us about sort of what your priorities are for this budget cycle.
Sure.
And I can definitely promote that within the PTO,
Yeah.
PTO, just to make people aware. I mean, this year, part of my priorities for PTO was to increase communication, and I'm really trying to do that through various means. So Bob's been helpful, and just, like harnessing the power of Facebook, and because I think that's, people just want to feel like communicated to, but they can make the choice not to come, but as long as they know it's there. And instead of feeling like in the dark, like I think that's what happened in May, that people were just like, wait, what? I mean, I was like, wait, what? Because I wasn't coming to the meetings, I have 3 kids in sports and the spring is crazy and I wasn't going, but I made sure I was here, and I think if people just are aware of it, they will, a lot won't come, but the people who prioritize it will.
So we're always willing to listen. I like to think
If we could take a little extra time so that I don't have to relive the events of
I felt so bad for you guys.
Oh, it's hard on everyone. It wasn't
Can I
just.
make a recommendation that we look at December? I happen to know all of your school committee dates in advance because I haven't planned until about June. Could we look at December 1st or December 15th? Because I'm afraid if we wait until January, we're too far into the budget process with where the town is and the town administrator's fees. So
tentatively, and just put the word out, watch the agenda.
Well,
December 1st or 15th.
Jennifer and I will put together when we're going to be bringing the principals in to do the budget.
it's actually December 1st, by the way.
So it should be December 1st.
That's it.
And can you put it on your blog?
I mean,
too?
it's your meeting, so whatever you want to have.
Yeah.
Put it on the Facebook page.
So do we want to do December 1st because that was the target date for having the principals come in with the school site council?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's commit to it.
We just smile and nod, Jen. Just
Great.
Put it on the agenda.
I mean, it's their meeting, so it's not like I'm telling them. That's December 1st is the next school committee meeting.
The next school committee.
Yeah.
But as far as like.
So the next process that we've developed over time is we have a budget proposal that we put together. And so the principals will be presenting the building priorities. So that's where parents are going to want to come out from the building perspective to say, oh yeah, we believe we need these sort of things, and those are our priorities. There's other things I think we need to highlight, like when the town administration, the meeting that the town administrator actually sets his recommendation for our budget. You know, nobody ever shows up to that meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other meetings and milestones that, you know, we were fortunate that the Board of Selectmen asked us last meeting to have a joint meeting with them. And we were able to give them some of this data that we shared with you tonight. That was unusually early, but although we've asked for that in the past. So, you know, those are the type of things I think you're asking that we should really be very proactive and advertise and start letting people know these are the budget processes.
I mean, is there one of you that I can sort of be linked with that, just to make sure like I'm getting the right?
Oh, yeah. I don't need to be that person, because I also do budget subcommittee, so I'm also, I just feel like I even have a little bit, sometimes of a preview on the dates and stuff.
Yeah, I do negotiation and policy, I'm probably not the best one for that.
Okay, no, that's
The negotiation stuff I couldn't tell you about anyway.
Oh, funny how that works.
Okay.
Exactly.
But yeah, no,
Thank you. Okay, so just
honestly, I mean, it's
to make sure
our
that-
job is easier the more information we have.
The other place that parents should go, and it was mentioned earlier tonight, like the school councils are really the place where, because we're having these conversations in December, 1st, where we're making the recommendations. They've been talking about it since last year, and principals were given a specific directive of make sure that you have specific recommendations from your school councils. So whether people are serving as active members on those school councils or simply going to the meetings so that they are able to hear the information or getting information from there, I think that is probably the best place to go, especially for school-specific issues, and looking at some of those pieces. The challenge then is taking it together, because we have the schools talking about their individual needs, then we need to bring it together at a district level perspective, which is really where we're at now with the December 1st meeting is, okay, let's look at our umbrella and see where we're at there. So the earlier people are involved in the conversations, the more those priorities are gonna get out and get hashed through. And I know Chuck has done a phenomenal job. All of the principals at their school site councils have done a phenomenal job of really having those conversations to say, okay, what are our priorities? And Chuck's had some conversations with me about some staffing that people are making recommendations on, and it's great to have that in September, October, rather than even in December, which may seem really early to start talking about the next year, but it's kind of late.
Now, school councils, are those parents, faculty, and community members? Or
Yes.
is that just-
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I remember seeing like little.
It's a sitting committee, much like this one,
Okay.
and it turns over a little bit every year, but the law says that you have to have equal representation amongst all the members of the constituency. And it's sort of like, it's a little bit different than the Principals Advisory Council, but the school council, does a lot of that sort of work on a building level.
Okay. Okay.
And we honestly do talk about the budget all year long. And it's not always doom and gloom, but sometimes there's updates, and we almost always have it now on the agenda. That way, if there's a last minute thing, because we can print the agendas up in advance, that way we can always be making sure we're aware of anything, and sometimes it's positive news.
You know what I wanted to mention, just because I know we're televised, and also maybe just to put in the minutes, I think because there are folks who come every week to our meetings, but I think for Mr. Clancy, who might not know this, I think us talking about the spreadsheet makes it seem, because maybe he's not aware, we've just gotten a new business manager who is technologically savvy and can, I think that was part of the conversation that was missing, that wasn't stated. So I just wanted it out there to everybody at home watching, because, we're so popular, we know. But no, just to say that this is just a new format for us. We're excited to see it, so I just wanted to mention that.
I think the last piece, the last loop I would add is, Jen, when you talk about, we do have things, and there were things that we've seen work in these other districts, I think that at some point, that would be a nice loop to close for parents, because it's hard to envision, unless you're an educator, I'm sure even for some of the educators, it's hard to envision how does this work, like what does this look like?
So when we launch the Social Emotional Learning Task Force, I encourage you all to come out, because that's the purpose of that group, is so that we can share with parents what the different programs are and how they can work specifically for Maynard, because there are any number of ways of doing this piece, and we will be having a task force with the teachers as well after school, so that they can participate in either the evening or the afternoon ones. So Carol and I will be launching that shortly. we're sort of trying to stagger the launches so that people can know when those are happening. So that communication will be coming out. I will resend the survey to ask people to sign up for those task forces. We did have several parents wanting to volunteer for that. But if people want to begin to have those conversations about, well, how do we look systematically at expectations, at reducing anxiety, at providing opportunities for students to enjoy going to school, you know, that's why we all go into this profession. So I know that that's something that I'm interested in having a conversation about.
So the other thing I wanted to comment on is that I sort of understood maybe what this gentleman was trying to say. I think we do have a great idea. We are invested in the social and emotional piece. And I think then what happens is that we go back to numbers, 1 to 20. So that 20 kids can look very different in my classroom compared to Nancy's classroom. We may both have 20 kids in our classrooms, but those 20 kids can look very different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think what I think we need to do is blend the two. So talk about the social emotional piece and look at those individual students in the classroom in that ratio of 1 to 20. Does that make sense?
But I would like to say that the principals, like when we have new registrations, so you talk about your class or, you know, that is the principal's responsibility, and when we looked over the data, we noticed, you know, one class might have 18, one class might have 17, and then a couple of other teachers at that grade will have 20 or 21. So the principal, along with sometimes the director of student services, makes those sort of decisions on balance. So it is their responsibility, but they do, when we look at the numbers, we do see that they do make conscious decisions on that.
Do you think that systematically they're able to then, so sometimes problems don't show up until later in the year, you've already got the 20 in your classroom.
And as a teacher, and I know Dawn said this, but as a teacher, I could have all those tools in that toolbox. I could be responsive classroom training, calm trained, skillful teacher trained. I could have all the training in the world, but still, it's not what that student needs.
Yeah, yeah.
And what that student needs affects what every student in your classroom needs. And it's just something to think about, because I think we do in this town, especially, I mean, I have kids here myself, we do a really good job looking at those individual students, and I think we just need to really look even closer, especially with that social and emotional piece now. I think even in society, we're realizing kids and adults have more social and emotional needs than we could ever have imagined.
Yeah, I think you're right on.
I would just tag on to what Ann Dunn just said. As a parent of 7th and 8th graders, my daughter was in 6th grade, and it was the second year where she had a class loaded with a lot of behavioral issues, to the point where the teachers for 2 years in a row couldn't, despite having the tools, I couldn't do it. I don't think any teacher could do it. And that's what really drove us to try a charter school, unfortunately, was the behavioral issues. They also needed more of a challenge, and that school wasn't a good match, so we're back. But I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you.
It does make me think one of my other priorities was always we have the great ideas that are in process, and what do you do in the meantime to make sure that you're trying to do everything you can to that commitment that we're learning, trying to implement these things that are going to help get us there. And in the meantime, but some of that, you know, it's good for us to hear, but then we have to just say, can you go back and make sure that that's happening?
We will continue to work with the principals, we will continue to work with the teachers so that interventions are being put in place as we can. And we will continue to look systematically in addition to individual needs.
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act, for sure.
Well, it's always great that you and Nancy
We're close.
Well, it's good that you guys come. You come to every meeting and you can report sort of what's on the ground as well, you know, and not a lot of people will share all that, so that's really helpful. So we appreciate you being here.
We appreciate your volunteering, and, you know, as having children gone through this district, I do appreciate it.
Yeah, we're all a team. This year more than so, we really need to all be a team, so we need to really do this, and I think we can, so. And I like that people come and share what they're thinking, because it doesn't happen in every district, you know. Some parents just break on Facebook and don't show up. We don't have that problem. We have people who come and show up.
No, they gripe on.
I think they do both, to be honest with you.
Or they do the magical thing, they gripe on Facebook, but then they come tell us that they were griping about it. So either way, we get the message.
It's possible. It's a great town to dedicate your time to, as we all know. Everyone in this room does something. Awesome. All right, other questions? Anything? We're good? You look like you were gonna say something.
No, I would just say, sorry, I used the term grandiose ideas that turned into a lightning rod. Not well. Sorry to be the downer tonight.
Now you know.
I think I'm in the blue zone. I think that was
All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, I saw you look at that backwards.
Just checking.